Chapter 521. The strange thing was, not only was there no rainbow fog in the basin, but there was also no fog in the sky above the basin. The clear sky was like blue velvet. That's not right. Yuchencho rubbed his chin and thought. It was said that the fog forest was shrouded in rainbow fog all year round. If there was such a big gap in the sky, it was impossible for the cultivators flying above not to see it. Yuchencho's gaze fell on the altar. There seemed to be something hanging there. Who cares? If it's dangerous, I'll go and take a look. Yuchencho slowly flew down on his sword and was constantly vigilant of his surroundings. In the end, he smoothly landed on the golden altar. He kept his flying sword in black flame and turned to look at his surroundings. It was still so quiet. Standing in the middle of the altar, he looked at the towering black mountains around him. It was solemn and grand. He felt so small. The blue velvet sky, the black mountains, and the golden ground. These three pure colors formed a strong contrast. Looking up at the sky, he could not help but yearn for the blue sky, as if the sky was his home. Who has nothing better to do? Yuchencho muttered and looked at the entire altar. The altar, which was tens of meters tall, was built in the shape of 4 steps. The area at the top of the altar was probably more than 100 square meters. 4 golden pillars, about 2 meters tall and covered in runes, were erected at the 4 corners of the altar. On the side of each pillar facing the center of the altar, there were 3 ancient characters. Yuchencho moved closer and vaguely guessed what it was. He did not know if it was right, but it seemed to be called Immortal Ascension Stage. Immortal Ascension Stage? Is it a place for immortal ascension? Yuchencho rubbed his chin with one hand and rolled his eyes while his other hand touched the golden pillar. He then clicked his tongue and said, "Good boy. Such a big place is actually built with gold. Damn it, they're too rich. Damn it. Or are you kidding? A place for immortal ascension is built with gold? Are immortals this cheap? It seems to be a sacrificial ground of some ancient race." He hugged the large piece of gold and touched it. He shook his head regretfully. This thing was no longer of much use to him. A curved golden pole was erected on this golden pillar, and a golden chain hung down from it. At the end of the pole hung an arm-length golden horn that was engraved with runes. It was right above his head. What the hell? It should be fine if I touch it. It's still elastic. Yuchencho stretched out his hand to grab the horn and tugged it down. He discovered that the curved golden pole was quite elastic. When he pulled, it bent, and when he let go, it bounced back. Looking around, he estimated that the only thing that could move was the golden pole with the horn hanging on it. Everything else was hard. Strange. Where did that sound come from? Could it be that it didn't come from here but from somewhere else? Just as Yuchencho was silently cursing, the bugle horn above his head suddenly emitted 3 long and deafening sounds. Woo! Woo! Yuchencho covered his ears with his teeth and quickly dodged to the side. Swoosh swoosh. A bunch of black flying swords instantly appeared. His face twitched and he stared at the swaying golden horn with bewilderment. After staring at it for a while, he realized that the golden horn had stopped swaying slowly. There was a powerful aura quietly spreading in the air. This thing could actually sound on its own. Could it be a magic treasure? Or did I trigger some restriction when I touched it? No, that's not right. I heard this sound when I was outside. No one should have touched it then. Thinking of this, Yuchencho looked around again. Other than him, there was no one, no ghost, no immortal, or any small animals. I don't believe it. Yuchencho slowly moved over, and the 1,000 flying swords behind him were ready to go. Finally, he grabbed the horn in his hand. He touched it left and right, but he couldn't find anything. A black light flashed behind him, and with a soft hiss, the golden horn was in his arms. He raised it up and squinted at the mouth of the horn. There was nothing special about it. It was not even as effective as binoculars. The only special thing was that it was made of pure gold. It would take a long time to bring it to the mortal world. There were no germs, right? Yuchencho looked at it, pulled up his clothes and wiped the mouth of the horn. He then got into position, put it in his mouth and blew hard. In the end, not even a fart came out. This guy had always been the rebellious type. He heard the sound just now. Why didn't I blow? He circulated his primordial essence and blew hard into the mouth of the horn. Woo-woo. Sure enough, it sounded. The loud sound echoed in the entire basin for a long time before it stopped. Yuchencho held the horn with a serious expression. This thing was obviously not for mortals. With the strength of mortals, it was impossible for them to blow it. It was for cultivators. Looking around, he realized that the entire basin seemed to have been dug out. It should have been dug out from the middle of a mountain, and then covered with tens of thousands of square meters of gold. This was not something that could be done with simple manpower and financial resources. Could it be that it was built by ancient cultivators? Also, this place was shrouded in colorful fog. With such a powerful poison, mortals would not be able to enter. He couldn't find an answer to this series of questions, and he reckoned that no one would be able to answer them. Suddenly, the originally clear sky was filled with the faint sound of thunder. Yu Qianqiu abruptly raised his head, only to see dark clouds stirring in the blue velvet sky. At first, the dark clouds the size of a fist rotated, but they grew bigger and bigger. Slowly they covered the entire sky above, and the basin was suddenly pitch black. The sound of thunder became louder and louder, shaking the entire basin. Rumble. Bang. A bolt of lightning flashed in the dark clouds, followed by sinister snaking bolts of lightning. The whole basin was lit up, and then it was dark, accompanied by strong winds. Such a huge commotion occurred in the basin, but outside the dense fog forest, the cultivators of the various countries did not notice any movement in the sky. They were discussing how to deal with Yu Qianqiu's breakout at night. Although they did not know whether Yu Qianqiu was telling the truth, they would rather believe it. It was better to be prepared. Little did they know that Yu Qianqiu was looking left and right in shock, and he was like a small boat in a tempestuous storm. This scene was truly a ghastly sight. He did not know what was going on. In any case, he was prepared to escape at any time. However, what was surprising was that the wind gradually subsided, and the surroundings became blue again. Normal light reappeared in the basin. The blue velvet was compressing the dark clouds of lightning and thunder, compressing it into a black hole. The lightning in the black hole was as fast as thousands of snakes. Yu Qianqiu's ears were buzzing with the sound of thunder. He looked up at the sky with his mouth wide open, looking a little silly. He did not know what the hell was going on in the sky. There was only thunder and no rain. At this moment, the black hole of lightning and thunder gradually rotated, as if it was going to spit something out. As it rotated, the colorful fog around the basin began to be sucked in, gradually covering the entire sky. The gathered fog began to be sucked into the black hole. Suddenly, a dazzling white light flashed in the black hole, and a figure flashed in the white light. Before Yu Qianqiu could react, he suddenly found that there was someone in front of him. He was shocked, and the flying swords behind him all moved in front of him with a swoosh. He saw a golden-robed middle-aged man staring at him coldly. That golden robe was very compatible with the environment. He asked, "Were you the one who blew the immortal ascension?" Yu Qianqiu did not reply but shouted back, "Who are you?" The middle-aged man was obviously stunned. He looked at the golden horn in his hands, and then at the golden chain that had been cut off. He said indifferently, "How dare you cut off the immortal ascension? Shut the *CK up. Who the hell are you? Otherwise don't blame me for being rude," Yu Qianqiu roared. He was actually a little nervous. This golden-robed man's entrance was too awesome. He had never seen such a flashy entrance. It actually caused dark clouds to gather and lightning to flash and thunder to rumble. "You don't know who I am?" The golden-robed man looked at him for a while and said in shock, "I can't see through your cultivation." The cold expression on his face gradually eased. With a faint smile, he cupped his hands and replied, "I am the Celestial Realm's emissary. I heard the Immortal Ascension's call, and have specially come to welcome you to the Celestial Realm." Celestial Realm? What did you say? Say it again? Yu Qianqiu was dumbfounded. The golden-robed man was a little confused. He smiled again and replied, "I am the Celestial Realm's emissary. I heard the Immortal Ascension's call, and have specially come to welcome you to the Celestial Realm." Dang. The horn in Yu Qianqiu's hand fell to the ground. He pointed at him and stammered, "You mean you are a deity from the Celestial Realm?" He could not help but look up at the spinning black hole that was still filled with lightning. "For the people of the mortal world, you can call me that." The golden-robed man smiled politely. "For a cultivator like you to reach such a cultivation level before ascending to the Celestial Realm, it is rare to see one in 1,000 years. After ascending to the Celestial Realm, I believe you can directly enter the exalted immortal level. I am not worthy of being called a deity." Although Yu Qianqiu's personality wasn't that great, his mental fortitude was absolutely top-notch. He gradually relaxed his mind, looked around his feet and said, "Holy sh*t, this damn place is really a place for immortal ascension." The flying swords all scurried back into the storage bag. He now believed that this guy was really a deity. He had no choice but to believe it. The phenomenon in the sky was extraordinary. Since the other party had already regarded him as a master, He might as well pretend to be a master first and sound him out. If it did not work, he would quickly leave. Of course, the Immortal Ascension stage is naturally a place for immortal ascension, the golden-robed man said politely. Although Yu Qianqiu was still a little surprised, he saw that the other party bullied the weak and feared the strong. Even if he was a deity, he would not be able to do so. Therefore, he walked around the golden-robed man a few times with his hands behind his back. As he sized him up, he asked, "Do you often come here to welcome people to immortal ascension?" "No." The golden-robed man cupped his hands. "There are 72 worlds in the mortal world. This world has stopped for countless years. No one has ascended to the celestial realm. You are the first in countless years. At the same time, you are also the person with the highest cultivation level in the 72 worlds." Chapter 522. My cultivation level is average. I'm passable. Yu Qianqiu laughed and pointed around. "What's going on here? Why did you come the moment I blew the horn?" The golden-robed man's expression turned solemn. A long time ago, an expert from the immortal world used his profound cultivation to break through the void and set up an array here. Once the immortal ascension is blown, it can reach the heavens. Our emissaries will open the corresponding passage to receive you. Then why did I hear the immortal ascension being blown by itself? Yu Qianqiu asked curiously. The golden-robed man smiled. You may not know this, but our emissaries also blow the immortal world's emissaries. Once the immortal ascension is blown, the mortal world's immortal ascension will resonate. Cultivators who have reached a certain level of cultivation will be able to hear the call no matter how far they are. They will follow the sound to the immortal ascension stage and ascend to the immortal world. As he spoke, he pointed at the basin. If your cultivation level is not high enough, you won't be able to hear the horn no matter how loud it is. The range of the array? You mean within this basin? Does that include the forest outside the basin? Yu Qianqiu asked. The range of the array is limited to the basin, the golden-robed man said patiently. This was because he had met Yu Qianqiu, who he could not see through. If it was someone with a lower cultivation level, they would not have the patience to chat with him. That's strange. Then why can I hear the horn from outside? Yu Qianqiu's face was filled with confusion, but he couldn't tell the other party that he was only at the nascent soul stage, yet he could hear it. Was the quality of his immortal ascension not up to standard? Or was it broken after years of disrepair? However, this was not a good question to ask. If he were to find out that he was pretending to be powerful in front of the other party, he might even be killed. This was an immortal from the immortal world, who knew what powers he had. What made him even more curious was that the golden bead in his body was so magical that even an immortal could not see through his cultivation level. Does one have to reach a certain level of cultivation to ascend to immortality? Can those with insufficient cultivation be promoted? Yu Qianqiu asked with a glimmer of hope. He was quite interested in becoming a legendary immortal. When the time came, he could bring his entire family and his subordinates along to bask in the limelight. That would be great. The golden-robed man was stunned for a moment before he said, "If your cultivation isn't high enough, you won't be able to withstand the might of the immortal ascension passageway." But he paused for a moment before continuing, "If there's a great immortal protecting him, or if there's some powerful protective immortal treasure, it won't be a problem. However, I'm afraid people who possess formidable immortal treasures or experts whose cultivation has reached the great immortal realm would disdain to do such a thing. Damn it. Isn't this the same as telling me that there's no hope? I don't have that many connections in the immortal world. If I had those connections, would I still be talking nonsense with you here? One look and I can tell that you're just an errand boy." Yu Qianqiu cursed silently. Seeing that he was still dawdling, the golden-robed man had been a guide for so many years, but this was the first time he had seen such a person. He thought to himself, an expert is indeed an expert. He's studying there slowly and calmly. He's not as emotional as the other ascenders. He could only remind him, "You'd better hurry up and ascend with me. This immortal passage can't be opened forever. If there's no response, it'll automatically close later." Oh no. How am I supposed to get rid of him? Yu Qianqiu looked at the black hole in the sky and tried to find something to talk about. I thought that ascending to immortality is a process of having thousands of rays of light above your head and stepping on colorful auspicious clouds. I didn't expect it to be through this black hole. Could it be that this seven-colored mist was the legendary seven-colored auspicious cloud? Isn't that a little too vicious? Colorful auspicious clouds? The golden-robed man was stunned. He looked up and saw the colorful fog swirling with the black hole. Suddenly, his expression changed and he said in shock, What's going on?" I was going to ask you what's going on. Don't you know? Yu Qianqiu glanced at him inadvertently and was stunned. He saw that the golden-robed man was looking at him and his hands were trembling. He could not help but ask, "What's wrong with you?" "The colorful fog. Is it the soul-transforming smoke? Have I been poisoned by the legendary soul-transforming smoke? How could this be?" "What?" The golden-robed man raised his head with great difficulty and looked at him in horror. "I have no enmity with you. Why do you want to harm me? Why do you want to harm me with the soul-transforming smoke? You must have the antidote, you must have the antidote, please give me the antidote, give me the antidote, save me." His voice became weaker and weaker. In the end he finally could not say anything. His whole body was frozen in a state of panic as he stretched out his hand to ask for help. Yu Qianqiu also froze in place and looked at the golden-robed man in shock. This situation was so familiar. It was the same as the dozens of poison cultivators from the Jinshan kingdom that he had peeked at in the fog. Could it be that even immortals could not resist the poison of the colorful fog? "What's wrong with you?" Yu Qianqiu asked again weakly. Then he asked a few more times but there was no response. Only then did he confirm that the golden-robed man was dead. He looked up at the still spinning black hole speechlessly. The colorful fog around it was still being sucked in slowly. The colorful fog. The soul-transforming smoke? He muttered and frowned deeply. A lot of mysteries surged in his mind. The golden-robed man obviously did not expect to see the colorful fog in this place. That was the soul-transforming smoke he mentioned. Where did it come from? In short, it would not appear for no reason. It was obviously left behind by someone. Or maybe it was deliberately left behind by someone. When the immortal ascension passage was opened, the spinning black hole naturally sucked in the colorful fog. Those who came out of the black hole would suffer if they were not prepared. Even immortals could not resist the soul-transforming smoke. It was definitely not a coincidence that it was set up at the immortal ascension stage. Yu Qianqiu suddenly felt a sense of conspiracy. It seemed that the entire misty forest was set up by someone to prevent anyone from entering and at the same time, not even immortals. Perhaps it was mainly targeted at immortals. Who could have such a grand plan? Was it a cultivator from the cultivation world? That was absolutely impossible. As Yu Qianqiu's eyes flashed, a bolt of lightning flashed out of the black hole and formed a twisted bolt of lightning in the sky above the basin. The black hole in the sky spun faster and faster. Finally, it turned into a dot and slowly disappeared. After the colorful fog in the sky lost its suction force, it began to drift back and return to the surroundings outside the basin. The sky reappeared, but it was filled with stars, twinkling brightly. The golden-robed man opposite him was still begging with a terrified expression. Yu Qianqiu shook his head and sighed. "Immortal brother, I'm sorry. I didn't know that I could blow an immortal to death with just a casual blow. I really didn't mean it. Please rest in peace. It's not safe to stay here for long. I'll take my leave first." Yu Qianqiu took out a few small silver balls and scattered them in all directions. It would be convenient if he wanted to come again in the future. He kicked the golden horn on the ground. It was also a treasure. He picked it up and was about to put it into his storage bag when he stopped and shook his head. He thought that it was better not to take it. If he attracted a few immortals because of this thing, he would be killed. After a moment of hesitation, he walked to the pillar with the horn and pulled down the golden chain. 2 green flames lit up between his thumb and index finger, and he reconnected the broken chain. After he let go, the horn hung on the pillar again. It's returned to its owner. I just came here for a stroll. It's none of my business. Yu Qianqiu shrugged. He threw out a green flying sword and jumped on it. With a whoosh, he flew to the top of the mountain. Halfway, he looked back and seemed to have thought of something. He rode the sword and flew back. Jumping back onto the altar, the cyan flying sword under his feet flipped in the air and bounced into the air. With a buzz sound, it emitted a cyan flame and turned into a flaming sword. Then it went straight toward the top of the golden-robed man's head. In an instant, vigorous green flames spurted out from the collar, sleeves, and all the gaps in the golden robe. As Yu Qianqiu raised his hand and waved, the green flames swam out of the golden robe like a dozen fire snakes and entered his palm. The golden robe fell to the ground. The person wearing the robe had disappeared without a trace. Dang dang dang. A bracelet that looked like refined steel bounced a few times on the golden altar. Yu Qianqiu walked over and picked up the golden robe. Other than a few pieces of immortal underwear, there was nothing else. Damn. Are immortals so poor? There are no elixirs or immortal treasures. Yu Qianqiu unfolded the entire golden robe and looked at it again. Indeed, he did not find anything valuable. The quality of the clothes was okay, but he did not know what material it was woven from. He lifted the robe and said helplessly, 3 years for the new one, 3 years for the old one, and another 3 years for the sewing and patching. I'm a child from a poor family. I don't have so many bad habits. I'll make do with it. Maybe it'll be useful in the future. He stuffed it into his storage bag and then grabbed the immortal underwear to check it again. He still did not find anything. In the end, a surging green flame surged out and turned the immortal underwear into ashes. It seemed that he had forgotten the theory of 3 years for the new and 3 years for the old. Poor. So poor. As he shook his head, his eyes fell on the bracelet that looked like refined copper that had rolled to the edge of the altar. The bracelet lay there quietly. It looked very ordinary and not easy to attract attention. His eyebrows twitched subconsciously. He had vaguely guessed something. He picked up the bracelet and weighed it in his hand. It was neither light nor heavy. It looked unremarkable. It was 2 fingers wide, grayish-green, slightly flat, and had no decorations. There were no welded seams on it. It was a seamless whole. I hope it doesn't disappoint me, Yu Qianqiu muttered softly. He held it in his hand and began to inject his divine sense into it. As soon as his divine sense entered, he immediately fell into a space. Chapter 523. Yu Qianqiu immediately winked and laughed. This bracelet was indeed mysterious. It actually hid a space similar to a storage bag. However, he soon couldn't laugh anymore. The space was not small. This room could match the capacity of 3 storage bags, but there was nothing inside. It was empty. It was really a space and empty room. He retracted his divine sense and was a little stunned. Did a dignified immortal really not have anything valuable on him? What was the use of this bracelet with a large capacity? In terms of storage space, which could be bigger than Utopia. Unwilling to give up, he injected his divine sense to check again. The result made him really speechless. There was actually a pile of ores and other things inside, piling up half the room. He retracted his divine sense again. Yu Qianqiu looked around suspiciously. Could it be that his eyes were playing tricks on him? Or did he see a living ghost? No, a living immortal? Immortals could also be haunting? It couldn't be that his eyes were playing tricks on him. Yu Qianqiu looked around with a fierce gaze. So what if it was a ghost? I can do whatever I want in the demon region. Why would I be afraid of a guy who just died? He injected his divine sense again, and Yu Qianqiu was instantly dumbfounded. It actually became empty again. This time, it would be a lie to say that he wasn't afraid. He only felt the hair on his back stand up. He looked around. In the huge empty space, he was the only one staying on an ancient golden altar. He couldn't hear any sound at all. Long live Chairman Mao. Long live Chairman Mao. He muttered in his heart 10 times in a row. Immediately, his timidity disappeared. He stood upright in the center of the golden altar and looked around coldly. He raised the bracelet in his hand and carefully injected his divine sense into it, observing the internal structure of the entire bracelet. Damn it. After Yu Qianqiu saw it clearly, he couldn't help but laugh. He realized that he was purely scaring himself. It turned out that there were 10 ring-shaped spaces inside the bracelet. Among these 10 spaces, a few rooms were filled with things and a few were originally empty. It was obvious that his divine sense had entered an empty room for the first time. The second time it entered a room filled with things. The third time it was empty again. In the end, he thought he had seen a ghost. Heaving a sigh of relief, he found a room to store his items and checked what kind of treasures were inside. There were 5 identical swords stuck in a small pile of silver sand. It was very likely that they were immortal artifacts from the immortal world. This immediately piqued his interest. As he tried to summon it, a cold light flashed and landed in his hand. Its appearance was similar to the flying swords used in the cultivation world, only the style of the handle was different. Yu Qianqiu used his finger to caress the cold blade of the sword. It was cold to the touch, and there were undulating lines on the blade that he could not understand. He could feel that there was a powerful and restrained aura hidden within. This was something that the flying swords of the cultivation world did not have. Once it was activated, its power would definitely not be small. The cold light flowed past and pierced towards the altar. Shwa! It directly penetrated the thick golden platform and stopped at the hilt. Yu Qianqiu clicked his tongue as he pulled out the sword. The sharpness of the sword was indeed incomparable to the flying swords of the cultivation world. Just now, he had only made it go into free fall, but it was already able to pierce through metal effortlessly. Such a good sword, he naturally wanted to try to control it. He wanted to separate a strand of divine sense into the sword to make it easier to control. Unexpectedly, there was already a strand of divine sense residing in it. Just as his divine sense was about to invade, it was driven out by that strand of divine sense. Obviously, it was left behind by the original owner. Thus, he tried several times in a row and used all his energy to erase that strand of divine sense. However, the other party was as majestic as a mountain. With his cultivation, he could not do anything to it at all. Yuchensho had to give up. Looking at such a good sword, it was really a pity that he could not control it. It was not like he could hold it in his hand and use it as an ordinary weapon. It would be more convenient to use his black fire broadsword. He helplessly threw it back into the bracelet. He took turns to try all 5 swords inside, but the result was the same. Not a single one was something he could control with his cultivation. Suddenly, he remembered that his master was asking old ancestor Nanming to refine a spiritual treasure. He wondered if he could give this sword to his master. With his cultivation, would he be able to erase the divine sense inside? If he could, since there were 5 swords inside, he should give one to his master as a show of filial respect. His divine sense continued to search for treasures in the space. Several large iron chests without lids caught his attention. When his divine sense spread out to take a look, he was immediately stunned. There were low-grade spirit stones, mid-grade spirit stones, high-grade spirit stones. There was even a chest with a pile of purple spirit stones. Among them there were more than a dozen black spirit stones. They were actually supreme-grade spirit stones and divine-grade spirit stones. He took out a few black spirit stones to check and confirmed that they were divine-grade spirit stones. Yuchensho was speechless. It seemed that divine-grade spirit stones were also a circulating currency in the immortal world. Otherwise, the chances of these immortals running errands would not be high. Surprisingly, there were also low-grade things like low-grade spirit stones in the immortal world. But when he thought about it, it made sense. After all, they were things that contained spiritual energy. The immortal world probably had more of them. After putting away the spirit stones, he looked at the sky and couldn't help but sigh. If only he could get more high-grade spirit stones in the immortal world. Then his subordinates wouldn't be short of money. But then again, if he really had the cultivation to go to the immortal world, he would probably be invincible in the mortal world. Why would he still work so hard to get spirit stones? Looking at the shining stars in the sky, his heart suddenly skipped a beat, and the true essence in his body became a little restless. Ah! Yuchensho exclaimed. This feeling was a little familiar. It seemed to have appeared when he was cultivating the fire and water arts. Could it be? He looked around and saw that he was in a golden world. Looking at the stars in the sky, he became a little excited. Could it be that the opportunity to cultivate a new art had arrived? Could it be the Western Star Chart's gold character art? Yuchensho looked at the golden world below the altar again and let out a deep breath. He thought to himself, I'm afraid that's the case. I understand now. It wasn't a coincidence that I could successfully cultivate the fire and water arts. When I comprehended the fire art, I happened to be next to the earth fire. When I comprehended the water art, I happened to be next to the 1,000-mile lake on Abedian Island. This was because I had the corresponding attribute as a primer to stimulate the meridians in the star chart to form the art. No wonder he thought he had memorized the remaining 3 star maps by heart, and often exhausted his mental energy to no avail. It turned out that this was the secret. That's not right. When I comprehended the earth art, didn't I also sit on the ground? If I have the corresponding attribute, why can't I stimulate the same art? Yuchensho thought hard for a while, but he still couldn't figure out where the problem was. Feeling the turbulent true essence in his body, he decided not to think so much. He would first see if the opportunity to cultivate the Western Star Chart's gold character art had arrived. He immediately sat down cross-legged and closed his eyes to get rid of the distracting thoughts in his mind. He brought out the changing trajectories of the Western Star Chart that he had memorized by heart. The moment the star chart appeared, his mind entered a clear and bright state. His mind was void of everything and he was swimming in the sea of stars. The changing trajectories of the stars gradually became clear in his mind. His brain quickly calculated the changes of every star in the Western Star Chart. Chapter 524. Without saying a word, he put the bracelet on his wrist and immediately closed his eyes. The red and black crystal beads in his dantian were originally revolving around his nascent soul, but for some reason they were now motionless. The true essence in his dantian was also revolving at a uniform speed with the 2 beads, like an ancient nebula that had lost its momentum, immediately surging around his dantian. What was going on? Yuchensho didn't know what to do in the face of this abnormal phenomenon. The situation in his dantian was different from others, and he didn't even have anyone to ask for advice. The only thing he could do now was to stay put and not forcibly interfere with it, so he decided to wait and see. Suddenly, he seemed to see the nascent soul in his body move, and his attention immediately focused on the nascent soul. He saw the nascent soul's pink little face was red, and its little head was raised and lowered repeatedly, and even its little arms and legs were kicking a few times. Looking at the situation, it seemed that something was blocking its breathing. Yu Qianqiu was a little panicked. Could it be that the poison of the colorful fog had taken effect? Damn it. If the nascent soul was poisoned to death, wouldn't my cultivation be crippled? Just when he didn't know what to do, the nascent soul suddenly raised its head, opened its mouth and sneezed. Pooh, a white light was spat out. Then the nascent soul comfortably took a few breaths and gradually calmed down. Yu Qianqiu was a little relieved as long as the nascent soul was fine. His attention turned to the white light flying around his dantian. He didn't know what it was, but it actually blocked the nascent soul's breathing. At this moment, as the nascent soul returned to normal, the two red and black beads that stopped at the nascent soul's waist gradually began to rotate again. Yin and yang moved, and the qi was born. The scattered true essence in his dantian gradually followed the rotation, and the chaos slowly returned to order. The speed of the white light flying around his dantian was limited by the rotating true essence, and Yu Qianqiu finally saw its original appearance. It turned out to be a white crystal bead, and it looked the same as the red and black beads, only the color was different. Yu Qianqiu immediately understood that it was a crystal formed when the nascent soul absorbed the metal element. But what was up with this guy? Little Red and Little Black had been so obedient since they were born, obediently drawing circles around their nascent soul, but it had to be a little naughty? As expected of Xiaobai, there might be something wrong with her brain. However, no matter how naughty Little White was, it could not resist the general trend. The centripetal force generated by the revolving true essence gradually drew it to the nascent soul's side. It bumped into Little Red without thinking, and Little Red instantly glowed with a red light. Little White seemed to be frightened. Not long after it dodged, it was pulled back by the centripetal force, so it bumped into Little Black again. Little Black also glowed with a black light as if warning it. Little White retreated again, but it couldn't escape the centripetal force. Left with no choice, it gently inserted itself between Little Red and Little Black and emitted a weak white light as if saying, "I'm also round, I can also emit light, give me a spot." After the red and black beads saw that the white bead also emitted light, the red and black lights of the two beads became even brighter. As they rotated, they leaned against each other and finally gave up a spot for Little White. The distance between the three beads suddenly became equal, forming a tripod, and they rotated around the waist of the nascent soul. Yu Qianqiu clicked his tongue in wonder. These three beads seemed to have a spirit of their own. Just when he breathed a sigh of relief and thought that it was over, the light of the three beads became brighter and brighter. The light of the three beads became brighter and brighter. The red, black, and white lights shone on each other, enveloping the nascent soul that was sitting cross-legged. At the same time, the three beads rotated faster and faster, as if they were a little too excited to have a new friend join them. These three guys were too naughty. Yu Qianqiu just smiled knowingly, but he immediately couldn't smile. It seemed that there was a problem. These three guys were a little too naughty. The true essence in his body was stirred into a tornado, gradually sucking in the three pearls. In the end, all of the true essence in his dantian was gathered between the three pearls, compressing the true essence to an incomparably thick and solid state. The nascent soul had been wrapped by the true essence, and he couldn't see its true appearance, so he didn't know what happened to the nascent soul. Damn. What the hell were these three bastards doing? Yu Qianqiu, who had his eyes closed, was sweating from the pain on his forehead. As the three beads rotated faster and faster, there was nothing in his dantian for them to sweep over. As a result, the entire dantian was slowly shrinking. Damn. Yu Qianqiu immediately grabbed 2 large handfuls of high-grade spirit stones from a few iron boxes in his bracelet, and channeled the spiritual energy in dozens of spirit stones directly into his dantian. However, the spiritual energy was not enough to fill the gaps between the three beads, and they were swept in the blink of an eye. Yu Qianqiu didn't say anything. Now the first thing to do was to fill up his dantian, otherwise he would die of pain. This was internal strife. Handfuls of high-grade spirit stones were taken out, but unfortunately, it was still not enough for the three guys. 2 handfuls of purple top-grade spirit stones were taken out, and the majestic spiritual energy surged from the meridians to his dantian. A burst of coolness echoed in his dantian, and Yu Qianqiu felt so comfortable that he let out a moan. However, after a short moment of comfort, the spiritual chi of the two best grade spirit stones in his hands was sucked dry, but the three guys were still there, like a whirlwind sweeping away the clouds, and in the blink of an eye the bulging spiritual chi was gone. Yu Qianqiu was a little flustered, and he grabbed 2 handfuls of top-grade spirit stones in his hands and sucked them crazily. He wanted to drown the 3 guys with spiritual energy. But the 3 beads still did what they wanted. Who was afraid of who? Thus the 2 sides began to compete. Yu Qianqiu used all his strength to fill his dantian with spiritual energy, and the 3 beads coldly accepted everything that came their way. The sky gradually brightened. Outside the fog forest, the cultivators from various countries all looked embarrassed. Yu Qianqiu actually played them. He said that he would break out from here at night, and everyone had made thorough preparations, but in the end, there was no movement from that guy at all. Everyone looked at each other and they all had the same thought in their hearts. How could they believe the enemy's words? Maybe Yu Qianqiu had already escaped somewhere else and they were still waiting here. Were they stupid? Thus, the cultivators from various countries all sent messages back, and sent out the news that Yu Qianqiu might have escaped, and asked for close attention. And they would continue to stay here to search, to prevent Yu Qianqiu from escaping. After all, they didn't know what the situation was in other parts of the fog forest. If it was difficult to escape from other parts, then it would be meaningless for them to stay here. Of course, they wouldn't just wait here, sending out a large number of people to search around the fog forest. At this point, Yu Qianqiu had no idea how much time had passed. In short, close to 10,000 top-grade spirit stones had been completely absorbed by him. That was close to 100 million high-grade spirit stones. However, the 3 beads were still moving around. Yu Qianqiu gritted his teeth, grabbing a piece of divine-grade spirit stones from the dozen remaining in the box. The amount of spirit energy contained in these 2 shiny black spirit stones was immeasurable. With a slight inhalation, the majestic spirit energy rushed into Yu Qianqiu's meridians. It swelled so much that Yu Qianqiu almost threw them away. Enduring the excruciating pain from the spiritual energy rushing through his meridians, he slowly suppressed the absorption speed, pouring the spiritual energy into his dantian. That kind of pleasant feeling that made one's soul float in the clouds filled his entire body. Chapter 525. He was pleasantly surprised. His divine sense quickly returned to his dantian to check. The nascent soul was still sitting cross-legged in his dantian, quietly refining and condensing the true essence. It was still the same nascent soul, but it had grown from a fat baby to a little boy. There was a white pearl at his waist. This was the change in his dantian. Looking at the condensed true essence that was as flexible as steel, Yu Qianqiu opened his eyes in excitement and rubbed his hands anxiously. How is this possible? How is this possible? He jumped from mid-stage nascent soul to early-stage tribulation passing. With a wave of his hand, he swept the dried spirit stones on the altar into utopia and calmed his excited emotions. Then he took out an ordinary flying sword and threw it into the air. Then he circulated his chi, driving the true essence in his body, and his shield of vigor quickly surged out. It was obviously different from the nascent soul protective aura. It was much more transparent and stable. With a point of his finger, the flying sword whistled toward him. With a clang, the flying sword was deflected, and the protective aura was unscathed. He then retracted the protective aura with a face full of surprise. The flying sword flew back with a swoosh and entered his storage bag. Then he closed his eyes and opened his arms. Between his sleeves, one side was constantly glowing with green light, while the other side was flashing with black light. Green and black flying swords continuously surged out. After the total number of flying swords exceeded 1,000, they were still emerging. When the number reached nearly 3,000, he opened his eyes and exhaled. He looked at the green and black flying swords around him in surprise. Guiyuan sword technique, sword control. Yu Qianqiu shouted and moved his fingers like a swimming dragon. Suddenly, the 3,000 two-colored flying swords danced in the sky in the basin, sometimes like a swarm of bees, sometimes like a flying dragon. The swords moved according to his will. It was a spectacular scene. It seems that controlling 3,000 flying swords is still a little difficult. I can only control 2,000 at the same time with ease. Yu Qianqiu muttered to himself. He took a deep breath and flicked his sleeves. His whole body soared into the sky and quickly floated in mid-air. Activating the sword art, the 3,000 flying swords created all sorts of obstacles in the air. Yu Qianqiu's figure flashed, rapidly changing his figure among the obstacles, quickly shuttling back and forth, experiencing the pleasure of flying in the air after getting rid of the flying swords. In the past, when he was flying, he could only adopt a standing or squatting position at all times. This was sometimes a very disadvantageous thing in a complicated situation. But now he could change his posture and fly in the air as much as he wanted. Howl? He let out a long howl in mid-air, and his body quickly flashed out of the sword net barrier, flying in circles in the huge basin space. The 3,000 flying swords followed closely behind him. Yuchencho looked back and smiled. With a thought in his mind, the 3,000 flying swords lit up with either green or black flames at the same time. The green and black lights intertwined, creating a lonely but unique radiance. That scene was simply breathtaking. He was like a phoenix that had just been reborn from the ashes, dragging a huge and gorgeous tail flame behind him as he soared in the sky. It was a very beautiful scene, but he was the only one admiring himself, stroking his hair coquettishly, dancing alone. Experiencing the more powerful energy in his body than ever before, it was enough to support him to fly in the air. That feeling was wonderful and very satisfying. Yuchencho dragged the tail flame behind him as he swooped down from the sky. When he was close to the ground, he quickly flew up in an arc, opened his arms and leisurely hovered in the air. The gorgeous tail flame quietly bloomed under his feet, elegant and calm. After playing for a while, he stopped in the air, rubbed his face with both hands and let out a long sigh. He shook his head and smiled reservedly, as if he was lamenting that he also had this day. Guiyuan sword art, sword control. Withdraw. Yuchencho shouted in the air and clapped his hands together. The 3,000 flying swords drew 3,000 magnificent lines of fire in all directions, and then swarmed towards him in the air. Yuchencho clasped his hands together and stood still. Swoosh swoosh. The flying swords shot into his body one by one and then disappeared. When the last sword also disappeared, this beautiful performance finally ended. His figure flashed and he once again landed on the golden altar. After venting for a while, he could be considered to have calmed down. Now he was certain that his cultivation had indeed reached the early stage of tribulation passing, but how did this happen? Although he wasn't completely sure about one thing, he was sure that it had something to do with his understanding of the golden incantation. After thinking for a while, he remembered the various things in the past. He remembered that when he first practiced the fire incantation, although his cultivation had increased, there wasn't much change. If there was any change, it would be when he practiced the water incantation. Once he mastered the water incantation, he immediately broke through from the core formation stage to the nascent soul stage, and then his nascent soul spat out a red and black bead. At that time he didn't pay much attention to it, and thought that it was the result of his rapid cultivation progress. Now that he thought about it, his cultivation speed was indeed too fast. This time he just happened to practice the golden incantation, and his cultivation immediately broke through from the middle stage of nascent soul stage to the early stage of tribulation passing. Could these two breakthroughs be related? Once he mastered the water incantation, he broke through from the core formation stage to the nascent soul stage. Once he mastered the gold incantation, he broke through from the nascent soul stage to the tribulation passing. Then, if he comprehended the wood incantation or the earth incantation the next time, would he? Yuchencho's body trembled and his eyes flickered. He didn't dare to think any further. According to his speculation, if he comprehended the wood incantation or the earth incantation again, wouldn't he directly break through from the tribulation passing to the soul formation stage? If he comprehended all 5 incantations, and his speculation was correct, he would enter another stage from the soul formation stage. Yuchencho subconsciously looked back at the golden horn hanging on the golden chain. He thought to himself, perhaps at that time he would be qualified to blow it again. Then he shook his head and smiled bitterly. He still didn't know what was going on with these 5 incantations, and he didn't know when he would have the opportunity to comprehend the next incantation. He couldn't force it, and he was indeed thinking too far ahead. He didn't know that he had already stayed inside for 3 days, but the entire cultivation world outside had already been turned upside down because of him. Yuchencho had single-handedly slaughtered more than 2,000 cultivators from various countries. This was simply too shocking. All the soul formation stage cultivators from various countries were furious. They immediately ordered their disciples to kill Yuchencho, regardless of whether he was dead or alive. This time, Yuchencho had ruthlessly slapped the faces of those soul formation stage cultivators who sent their subordinates to steal the treasures. This slap was incomparably resounding, and it shocked the entire cultivation world. But without a doubt, it also brought him a lot of trouble. The promise that the soul formation stage cultivators wouldn't interfere was broken. The first to break this promise was the lord of the Jinshan country, the soul formation mid-stage cultivator, Pu Taidong. The death of 5 disciples at the end of the tribulation passing stage made him furious. After receiving the news, he immediately rushed to the fog forest. However, with his cultivation he didn't dare to trespass into the fog forest. This surprised his disciples. Third brother Xin, who was present, understood that the fog forest was extremely vicious. His master was proficient in medicine and had personally come here before. After testing the poison he still didn't dare to enter. As for him telling Yu Qianqiu that his master had entered before, it was just to flatter his master. For countless years, no one had ever heard of anyone who entered the fog forest being able to die a good death. It was precisely because it was never accessible that it became a forgotten corner of the world. Pu Taidong personally came to inspect the forest a few times, but he still couldn't find Yu Qianqiu. But this wasn't important. What was important was that he used his actions to tell the entire cultivation world that he had personally made a move. He would no longer abide by that stupid rule. As for his actions, the other soul formation stage cultivators didn't say anything. 5 disciples at the end of the tribulation passing stage had died. No one would let Yu Qianqiu off easily. What's more, since Yu Qianqiu was so powerful, they found a reason to personally make a move. In addition to this matter, there was another news that caused an uproar in the cultivation world. It was that the world's second expert, Wen Lanfeng, had come out of seclusion. The one who spread this news was naturally Hua Zongming, who was the first to know. Subsequently, under everyone's careful attention, everyone learned from some channels that Wen Lanfeng immediately went to the demon domain after coming out of seclusion. This news immediately aroused everyone's interest. It even overshadowed the limelight of Yu Qianqiu's massacre of 2,000 cultivators. As for why he went to the demon domain, although no one dared to go there to inquire about the news, everyone was undoubtedly clear about it. What else could the world's second expert do other than challenge the world's first expert, Bai Changchun, to a duel? Drinking tea and chatting was impossible. Almost all the soul formation stage experts were anxiously and uneasily waiting for the news. There were many reasons. Bai Changchun's skills shocked the world in the battle in the East Sea. That level of cultivation made everyone feel that they could never surpass it in their lifetime. When Lanfeng could confidently go to the demon domain to find Bai Changchun, indicating that his cultivation had reached an incredible level after 100 years of seclusion. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to find Bai Changchun. Bai Changchun alone was enough to give everyone a headache. Now that there was a similar Wen Lanfeng, everyone felt very bad. But everyone still hoped that Wen Lanfeng would be able to defeat Bai Changchun this time. Because those who had dealt with Wen Lanfeng knew that he was much easier to talk to than Bai Changchun. That fellow Bai Changchun was simply a god of death, and he would start a massacre at the slightest disagreement, causing everyone to be anxious and tremble with fear. If Wen Lanfeng was defeated again, there was no doubt that Bai Changchun would still be an insurmountable existence. In fact, everyone hoped that both of them would be seriously injured. It would be best if both of them were seriously injured. Then, everyone would join forces to get rid of the two in one fell swoop, completely removing the mountain that was pressing on them. Everyone would benefit together. A few days passed. Everyone waited anxiously, but there was no news. They did not know what the situation in the demon domain was like, but no one dared to go there to inquire about the news. Speaking of Wen Lanfeng, he was standing by the lake of Shuntian Island with Nongzhu. The two of them looked at the sparkling lake in the distance and enjoyed it side by side. Nongzhu tilted her head slightly and said, "You are going back. My injuries have healed. Why do I still stay here? Of course I have to go back." Wen Lanfeng sighed and said, "The world's #1 expert is the world's #1 expert. My cultivation has reached this level, but I still lost to him. I know that I can never surpass him in this life. This is unfathomable. I just don't understand how he can stay in the human world with such a cultivation. It stands to reason that he should have ascended to the immortal world long ago." Nongzhu looked back at him and asked solemnly, "Then what level do you think his cultivation has reached? You are close friends with him. Don't you know better than me?" Wen Lanfeng asked. Not far away, the laughter of two women could be heard. Nongzhu looked back and saw Ziyi and Furong talking and laughing. They were probably talking about something about Yu Qianqiu. This was the topic of conversation between the two women every day. After looking, she said slowly, "I don't know, so I asked you." Wen Lanfeng shook his head with a wry smile and said, "To tell you the truth, with my current cultivation, I will be able to integrate the 7 spirits hero into my life soul in less than 100 years and then ascend to the immortal world. Because of this, I have the confidence to fight Bai Changchun. However, even if my cultivation has reached this level, Bai Changchun can kill me with just a few moves. Can you imagine how high his cultivation is now? It's incredible." You are about to integrate the Seven Spirits hero? Nongzhu was shocked. What do you think? Wen Lanfeng smiled bitterly. Nongzhu knew that Bai Changchun's cultivation was high, but compared with Wen Lanfeng, she knew how scary it was. She swallowed hard and said, Old Bai? Does he want to be lazy in the human world for the rest of his life? He has become a land immortal. Isn't he just trying to scare me? They looked at each other and shook their heads speechlessly. Wen Lanfeng patted him on the shoulder and said with a smile, I still have to thank you this time. You saved my life again, so I owe you 2 lives. How can I repay you? This time you broke into the demon ghost region. Old Bai has made up his mind to kill you. I didn't save you. You should thank Old Bai's precious disciple. You should have heard it. Nongzhu shrugged. What kind of person is this Yu Qianqiu? At that time, there were thousands of people who witnessed it. Grandmaster Nanming looked at Bai Changchun and said, Among these 2,000 cultivators, the lowest cultivation level is at the nascent soul realm. Pu Taidong even had 5 disciples at the end of the tribulation passing stage, and they died under Yu Qianqiu's flying sword. Is this kid crazy? Nongzhu asked in a daze. Wen Lanfeng was also shocked. In his life he had never killed so many people at once. He glanced at Bai Changchun. Like master, like disciple. They're both cruel and merciless. Grandmaster Nanming said in a low voice, Pu Taidong has personally come out because of the death of his 5 disciples at the end of the tribulation passing stage. The soul-forming realm cultivators of various countries are also restless. Pu Taidong. What a great ability. Bai Changchun said softly. His voice was not loud, but the coldness in his words sent a chill down the 3 spines. The 3 of them looked at each other. If Pu Taidong knew that he had provoked Bai Changchun's disciple, how would he feel? As expected, Bai Changchun said with a cold gaze, More than 5,000 cultivators are after my disciple. Pu Taidong's disciple is a human, but is my disciple not a human? It seems that the Lord of Jinshan Kingdom has to be changed. He looked back at Grandmaster Nanming and said, Nanming, I'll leave the matters here to you for the time being. I'll go to other countries and see how many heads Pu Taidong has grown. The few of them were shocked when they heard this. Was he going to start a massacre? Grandmaster Nanming stammered, Then, this? Nongzhu frowned and immediately sent a voice transmission to Wen Lanfeng. Brother Wen, once this crazy old man goes out, the cultivation world will definitely collapse. Just do as we agreed, please. Bai Changchun. Wen Lanfeng took a step forward and said with a smile, Thank you for showing mercy. You should focus on your own business with Nanming first. You don't need to do it yourself. It's making a mountain out of a molehill if you do it. Although I, Wen Lanfeng, am no match for you, I'm confident that I still have some influence in the cultivation world. I'm about to say goodbye to you. I'll go back and take care of your disciple. You. Bai Changchun was startled. Although Wen Lanfeng was no match for him, with his cultivation he would probably have few opponents in the cultivation world. It shouldn't be difficult for him to go out and help them. That's right. Why didn't I think of that? Nongzhu appeared to be suddenly enlightened. She walked over and patted Wen Lanfeng's shoulder saying, Old Wen, you're right. Sending Old Bai out personally is making a mountain out of a molehill. It's best if you go out and warn those soul formation cultivators, haha. Right. Grandmaster Nanming struck while the iron was hot, saying, Bai Changchun, let's leave this matter to Wen Lanfeng. On the top of a snowy mountain in the Di-Rong Empire, Bing Qingzi, who was at the final stage of the soul formation realm, suddenly opened his eyes and stood up. He looked in the direction of the Baiwan Kingdom in a daze, his white robe fluttering in the wind. In the cloud palace of the heavenly peak in the East Nation, Hu Changshou, who was at the final stage of the soul formation realm, flashed out of the palace and looked in the direction of the Baiwan Kingdom through the sea of clouds. In the Tuan Kingdom, the headquarters of the World Chamber of Commerce, Cornucopia, God of Wealth Peak. Yin Baikong was also looking in the direction of the Baiwan Kingdom. He stroked the trunk of a pine tree and said in a muffled voice, Wen Lanfeng defeated Bai Changchun? Unbelievable. Sikong, you've seen Bai Changchun's skills in the East Sea. Do you think this news is reliable? Behind him stood a skinny man with white hair. He was his eldest disciple, the early stage of the soul formation realm, Sikongju. The gloomy Sikongju replied, It's hard to say. I don't believe that there's always the number 1 in the world. Besides, Wen Lanfeng has really returned. There's no doubt about it. You mean Wen Lanfeng might really defeat Bai Changchun? Yin Baikong turned around and asked. Not necessarily. Sikongju frowned and said, There's something that I can't figure out. It said that when Lan Feng went to the demon domain more than 10 days ago. Is his battle with Bai Changchun going to last more than 10 days? Yes. Yin Baikong looked in the direction of the Baiwan kingdom again and sighed, "We'll understand everything after we go to the demon domain. However, the final news is not confirmed yet. If we suddenly go there, I'm afraid we'll get ourselves into trouble. Since when Lan Feng can return from the demon domain alive, it's worth it for us to make a great effort to befriend him no matter if he wins or loses. Sikong, prepare a gift for me. I'm going to Baiwan Kingdom to congratulate Wen Lan Feng for coming out of seclusion. By the way, I want a big gift." "Understood. I'll do it now." Sikong Ju bowed and left. The top 10 experts of the cultivation world were all late-stage soul formation experts. Unfortunately, 2 of them were killed by Changchun in the Battle of the East Sea. In other words, there were only 8 late-stage soul formation experts left in the entire cultivation world. Among the 8, apart from Bai Changchun, Wen Lan Feng, Yin Baikong, Bing Qingzi, and Hu Changshou, the remaining 3 were also staring in the direction of the Baiwan Kingdom. They all felt that it was time to make a trip there. There were also lords of the mid-stage soul formation experts who came to the Baiwan Kingdom one after another. All of them brought gifts of great value. It should be known that if Wen Lan Feng really defeated Bai Changchun, he would be the true number 1 expert in the world. Even if he didn't defeat Bai Changchun, Wen Lan Feng's cultivation was worth befriending. Moreover, everyone wanted to inquire about the news. Chapter 527. The people who paid the most attention to Wen Lan Feng were naturally the people of the Wen family. Wen Rui had already sent people to wait outside the Fey Ghost domain while he stayed in the Wen family to make arrangements. What arrangements? Naturally, it was to prepare for the Wen family's retreat after Wen Lan Feng was killed by Bai Changchun. It was related to the rise and fall of a big family, so early preparations had to be made. Baiwan country's holy land, the Holy Temple. When Rui stood quietly in the center of the hall, spending more than 10 days in anxiety and uneasiness. The disciples sent to wait outside the Fey Ghost domain sent news that the old ancestor had safely returned from the Fey Ghost domain and was heading to Baiwan country. Ah! When Rui raised his head and roared, shaking the furnishings in the hall and causing them to fall to the ground. The anxiety and uneasiness that had accumulated over the past few days poured out. This news was not told to anyone because the old ancestor did not like to be ostentatious. A figure flashed and appeared in the sky above the Holy Land alone, waiting for the old ancestor's return with an excited face. When Rui was even more excited when a figure rapidly approached from the distance. The old ancestor's cultivation had indeed improved greatly. Then, his vision blurred and a tall figure in a gray and white robe appeared in front of him. The gray and white robe fluttered in the wind. Wen Lan Feng smiled faintly and said, "Wen Rui, you've worked hard all these years." This sentence made Wen Rui's nose turn sour. He bowed deeply and said, "Welcome, old ancestor. Let's go back and talk." Wen Lan Feng had disappeared, but his voice still floated here. Wen Rui turned and returned. The holy temple of Baiwan country was hidden in the mountains and rivers. It was a palace made of white jade, white and warm, elegant and extraordinary. Wen Lan Feng walked in slowly. At this time, the holy temple was covered with things that had been tidied up. It was still clean and tidy. Because the jade was transparent and the dome was made of thin jade, the entire temple was filled with a hazy white light. That holy aura made everyone's heart feel holy and clear. Wen Lan Feng quietly walked to the central seat slightly higher than the entire hall and sat down. Under the holy white light, he looked at Wen Rui and smiled, "Were you waiting for me outside?" Although their cultivation was only 2 levels apart, Wen Rui was considered Wen Lan Feng's great-grandson. They were family. Wen Lan Feng had always been amiable, so Wen Rui was not nervous. He said frankly, "I heard that the old ancestor has returned from the Fey Ghost domain. Of course I have to welcome you. Let me ask you about someone. I don't know if you know him," Wen Lan Feng said. Wen Lan Feng said, "Who?" "If I had known, I would have let Bai Changchun do it himself." Wen Lan Feng sneered. "But it's fine. It saves me a lot of trouble. I just need to wait for the guest." Wen Rui nodded and then added softly, "Ancestor, not long after you left, Senior Lu of Spirit Fang Valley came to find you." Upon hearing this, Wen Lan Feng jumped to his feet and muttered to himself with an excited expression, "She came to see me personally? She came to find me personally?" After a few words of excitement, his expression became gloomy again. He shook his head and said, "I'm afraid that she came to find me for no other reason. She must have heard the news and came to stop me from going to the demon domain to find Bai Changchun." Ah. I haven't fulfilled my promise to defeat Bai Changchun. How can I face you? I'm afraid I won't have the chance in this life. Why should I see you again? When Rui lowered his head helplessly. Ancestor. Just wake up. However, this was the ancestor's private matter. It was not his place to interrupt. Yu Qianqiu, who was in the mist forest, knew nothing about what was happening outside. After knowing that he had become an expert in the early stage of tribulation passing, he looked around happily. He stood on the golden altar and giggled unscrupulously. After all, he was the only one here. Before leaving, Yu Qianqiu suddenly raised his arms and shouted, "Thank you, dense fog forest, thank you, 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 thank you." What do you mean? Is someone from the immortal world coming again? Yu Qianqiu put down his hands and looked around in shock at the colorful fog on the mountain peak. He guessed that another immortal was going to suffer. He took a few steps back and stood at the edge of the altar, leaving the center of the altar for the immortal world to descend to the mortal world. Yu Qianqiu crossed his arms and looked on coldly. He snorted and said, "Life is short. Like the morning dew, there are not many people who can see the immortal world die." He looked very proud, thinking about what treasure the next immortal world would have. Outside the mist forest, the cultivators from the various countries had already dispersed. However, there were still some people hiding in the surrounding clouds. They were the people from the various countries who stayed behind to continue observing. They wanted to prevent Yu Qianqiu from running away. Even if they didn't catch him, they would at least follow him when they discovered him. However, these people suddenly realized that in the sky above the central area of the mist forest, there were dark clouds rolling, lightning flashing, and thunder rumbling. The dark clouds kept rolling, accumulating into a thick layer of clouds. Lightning dragons flickered in and out of the clouds, spitting out ferocious lightning bolts. Suddenly, an early-stage tribulation passing cultivator shouted, "It's the tribulation clouds." Someone beside him frowned and said, "Something is going through the tribulation clouds in the mist forest. I don't know if it's a human, a demon, or a ghost." The people hiding in the clouds came out one after another. One should know that the power contained in the tribulation clouds was huge. It was even more powerful than the people who were going through the tribulation clouds below. Once the surrounding clouds and mist were implicated, the people hiding inside wouldn't have a good time. Actually, there was something that Yu Qianqiu, who was hiding inside, and the cultivators hiding outside did not know. Previously, when the immortal ascension passage opened, although the sky was also covered by dark clouds, lightning flashed and thunder rumbled, the people outside the mist forest did not see or hear anything. On the contrary, the appearance of the tribulation clouds this time allowed everyone to see it. Yu Qianqiu, who was standing on the golden altar with his arms crossed, gradually felt that something was wrong. The wind and clouds were turbulent, lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. However, it did not condense into a black hole like last time. Instead, it seemed like a conspiracy was brewing in the sky. The strong wind swept through the basin. Yu Qianqiu was like a small boat in the raging waves. He wanted to leave, but in order to see what was happening behind him, he was forced to stay by the side and hugged a golden pillar to resist the strong wind. Damn it. I'll endure it for the sake of watching a good show. I hope you won't disappoint me. Yu Qianqiu hugged the pillar and shouted towards the sky. He thought that the commotion this time was even bigger than the previous time when the immortals descended to the mortal world. He reckoned that there would be a good show to watch and perhaps the benefits would be greater. In the end, the heavens immediately gave him an answer. Boom! A loud sound shook the sky, and the basin was filled with echoes. A ferocious and meandering thick thunderbolt instantly smashed down with a bang, illuminating the entire basin clearly. The sound and the aura were shocking. Yu Qianqiu felt that it was blinding and he squinted his eyes. However, before he could react, he felt as if he was struck by lightning, and his whole body went numb. He, who was hugging the golden pillar, was sent flying and rolled to the center of the golden altar. His whole body was charred and his clothes were ragged. The charred smoke from his body was blown away by the wind. He laid there and his eyes rolled back and he instantly fainted. The so-called tribulation clouds were the 9 stages of tribulation clouds in the sky. Each stage was stronger than the previous one. If one could withstand it, he would succeed. If not, there was no need to explain the consequences. In fact, the early stage of tribulation clouds was not very difficult for most cultivators to withstand. However, Yu Qianqiu did not even think about tribulation clouds, and was still waiting to watch the show. In the end, he was unprepared for the lightning's wrath, and it would be strange if he was not unlucky. This was retribution. The lightning flashed more frequently in the dark clouds, and the next wave of more powerful lightning strikes was coming. However, Yu Qianqiu really fainted. At this moment, a golden light suddenly appeared from his abdomen, and it was even more dazzling than the entire golden altar. It slowly wrapped around Yu Qianqiu. Chapter 528. The dark clouds in the sky darkened and the wind surged. The lightning dragon stuck out its tongue and peeped at the golden light below. The situation seemed to be a confrontation. Suddenly there was a thunderclap and a lightning bolt as thick as a bucket drilled out of the dark clouds and went straight for the golden light in the center of the altar. The golden light that was wrapped around Yu Qianqiu also shone with thousands of golden rays in an instant, enveloping the entire platform of the altar. A green and white light and a golden light instantly collided with each other. Boom! The two forces collided, creating a loud sound in the air, and a powerful shock wave spread to the entire basin. The green and white lightning bolt was obviously weaker, and it was instantly destroyed by the brilliant golden light. Even the cultivators outside the fog forest heard the loud sound, and they looked at each other in shock, not knowing what was going on. At first, the first lightning bolt looked quite normal, like someone in the early stage of the tribulation passing. How did the second lightning bolt become so powerful in an instant? It was like a cultivator in the middle stage of the tribulation passing. Someone cried out in surprise. In the sky above the center of the fog forest, the dark clouds gradually turned as black as ink, surging and surging. It was extremely terrifying, and countless lightning dragons were shuttling in the dark clouds. The scene was even worse than the tribulation passing at the end of the tribulation passing. Just as the thunder in the sky was brewing its power, the golden light in the basin seemed to be angry. The golden light shot up from the basin into the sky like countless giant golden thorns, shining and stirring the dark clouds. In the ink-like dark clouds, the lightning bolts became more intense, and they crazily revolved around the golden thorns. The monstrous wind and waves rushed in all directions, forcing people thousands of meters away to quickly retreat. Everyone looked at the scene in the distance, bewildered. In the dark clouds, a golden light pierced through the sky and rushed into the universe. The golden light shone in the universe, and then it immediately retracted, as if it was summoning something. In the vast universe, because of the appearance of this golden light, the nearby 12 stars instantly shone with silver splendor, and they quickly shot toward the coordinates exposed by the golden light. 12 rays of silver light broke through the atmosphere and shot toward the dark clouds that were entangled with the golden light. Every time the silver splendor rushed into the dark clouds, there would be an earth-shattering explosion in the sky. 12 consecutive earth-shattering explosions were deafening to the ears of those hiding 10,000 meters away. The dark clouds that filled the sky were instantly dispersed by the 12 silver splendors. When he realized that there was nothing that interested him, he flew out of the basin without another word. After finding the direction he had come from, he released the blue fire flying sword to scout ahead and quietly returned to the place where he had been entangled with the various sections. After checking, he realized that there was no one outside. He immediately felt that it was strange. Could there be an ambush outside? Thinking about it, he felt that it was possible. He retreated into the depths of the fog and disappeared. Once he returned to Utopia, he immediately found Guan Yu and asked him to come up with another battle plan. Guan Yu said in shock, "Who are you targeting this time? Damn it. Over 5,000 people are chasing after me. This is intolerable. Especially those bastards from the Jinshan Kingdom." Yu Qianqiu said fiercely, "The target is very clear. The coordinates of the Jinshan Kingdom Spirit Stone Mine are all in place. I'll go scout tonight. Get ready, just like what happened to the Dying Kingdom last time." Hearing that Yu Qianqiu was being chased by over 5,000 people, Guan Yu's face sank. He nodded and said, "Don't worry, the team can assemble at any time to fight. However, don't you have to consider something? We just massacred the Dying Kingdom Spirit Stone Mine. Will the Jinshan Kingdom be prepared?" Yu Qianqiu immediately replied, "That's why I'm going to scout. If it really causes a large number of casualties, I naturally won't act rashly. It's not worth it. However, I think their attention is not on the Spirit Stone Mine now. I'm afraid it's a good opportunity for us to strike." Understood. Guan Yu nodded decisively. He didn't know that Yu Qianqiu had attracted a lot of attention by killing more than 2,000 people outside. Since Yu Qianqiu said it was okay, what else could he say? Dian City, Dirong Kingdom's embassy. State preceptor man who led 3 junior brothers to accompany Yan Zhuixing, while third brother and fourth brother stayed on Everlasting Island. At this time, Yan Juexing was asking a Rong Kingdom cultivator about Yu Qianqiu in detail. Because they didn't know that Yu Qianqiu had massacred 2,000 cultivators on the way, they were shocked when they learned about it. They didn't expect Yu Qianqiu to be so powerful. Yan Juexing's eyes flashed with brilliance and he kept smiling. After learning that when Lan Feng had come out of seclusion and had returned to Baiwan Kingdom from Monster Domain, Man Hu waved his hand to dismiss the cultivator and asked, "Young Palace Master, what's your next step?" "From what you said, it seems that when Lan Feng might have defeated the world's #1 expert. It's really admirable." Yan Juexing turned back and said, "I want to see the world's #2 expert. I wonder if State Preceptor has a way to take me there?" This. Man Hu pondered for a while and shook his head. It's difficult to break into Baiwan Kingdom's sacred land. I'm afraid it won't be easy to meet Wen Lanfeng. There's always a way. Yan Juexing pursed his lips and smiled faintly. I have a hunch that since Baiwan Kingdom is so lively, we might meet Yu Qianqiu there. Hearing that they could meet Yu Qianqiu, their faces darkened. He was the enemy who killed their second brother. Man Hu said in a deep voice, "Since young Palace Master wants to go, we'll accompany you. When Lanfeng coming out of seclusion is a big deal. Maybe we can meet Master." "That's great. I'm about to thank him for taking care of me." Yan Juexing sighed. After a short discussion, they decided on the itinerary to Baiwan Kingdom. The unusual phenomenon in the fog forest set off an uproar in the cultivation world. Such a divine event had never been heard of before. It was really unbelievable. However, what made people depressed was that this matter just had to happen in the misty forest, making people unable to investigate even if they wanted to. Then the next day, another shocking event happened in the cultivation world. 13 spirit stone mines in the Jinshan Kingdom were all massacred overnight. Everything that could be looted was robbed and everyone who could be killed was killed. The situation was the same as in the Dian Kingdom. All the spirit stone mines were blown up. The most arrogant thing was that the murderer did not hide anything at all. The 13 hero flags were all in the 13 spirit stone mines. It was obvious that the murderer did not care about the Jinshan Kingdom's lord, Pu Taidong. In the Jinshan Kingdom's throne room, Pu Taidong was so angry that he almost vomited blood. He looked up to the sky and roared. He couldn't figure it out and he couldn't understand it. He didn't know what kind of bad luck he had run into. First, 5 disciples in the late tribulation passing stage had been killed, and now all the spirit stone mines had suffered such a fate. The losses were too heavy and his vitality was greatly damaged. This wasn't something that could be recovered in a year or two. Overnight, the entire cultivation world suddenly realized that during this period of time, either nothing happened or something big happened, attracting everyone's attention. Everyone started counting with their fingers. First, Yin Baikong's grandson was kidnapped by a hero in the Dian Kingdom. Yin Baikong did not have any temper and paid more than 300 million spirit stones. Second, Yu Qianqiu was discovered after he snuck in. He claimed to be the #1 expert below the soul formation stage, which attracted the attention of the cultivators of the various countries. In the end, the cultivators of the various countries suffered a loss. Third, Zhongming's 17 spirit stone mines were massacred by a hero overnight, which shocked the entire cultivation world. Fourth, Yu Qianqiu was chased by the cultivators of the various countries. After he escaped to the fog forest, he turned around and slaughtered nearly 2,000 cultivators of the various countries. This shocked the entire cultivation world again. Chapter 529. Fifth, when Lan Feng came out of seclusion, went to Demon Domain to challenge Bai Changchun, and then returned safely. Sixth, the divine might of heaven and earth incident in dense fog forest, which caused the entire cultivation world to boil. Seventh, the spirit stone mine in Pu Taidong's hands was massacred by the hero, which was exactly the same as Hua Zhongming's experience, forcing all the countries to send more manpower to defend their spirit stone mines. Previously, everyone guessed that the hero was someone who deliberately caused trouble for Yin Baikong, and then they guessed that it was an organization that deliberately caused trouble in Daeong Kingdom. Now everyone realized that something was wrong. The hero seemed to have started in Daeong Kingdom, and the nearby Jinshan Kingdom suffered a calamity soon after. Who would be next? No one could be sure of the answer to this question, so they could only strengthen the defense of their own spirit stone mines. In just a short period of 2 months, the seemingly calm cultivation world had actually experienced so many major events. It was simply too much for everyone's eyes to take in. Many people liked to watch the bustle and they would go wherever there was trouble. They realized that in their entire lives of cultivation, this was the first time they were running around so frequently. Everyone counted the 7 major events and found that as long as the hero appeared, he would do something that shocked the cultivation world. Out of the 7 major events he took up 3. Then out of the 7 major events Yu Qianqiu also took up 2. The other 2 were separate events. Yu Qianqiu didn't think about this at all. To him, he didn't have anything better to do than to count his fingers and think about this. However, what others did not know was that the events caused by the hero were actually done by him, Yu Qianqiu. The other divine might of heaven incident in dense fog forest was also related to him, but even he did not know about it. In this way, out of the 7 major events, Yu Qianqiu had caused 6. If Wuxia of China's cultivation world knew about this, he would not be surprised, because he had long since concluded that wherever this guy went, there would be endless trouble. He was a jinx. Now, even the soul formation experts of the various countries were looking left and right, not knowing which side to focus on. After living for so many years, they had never seen such a frequent occurrence. Everyone was preparing to meet when Lanfeng. The commotion caused by the heavenly might of the dense fog forest made everyone want to go and take a look. However, before they could even reach the dense fog forest, Pu Taidong's spirit stone mine was once again massacred by heroes. Thus, they immediately returned to arrange for people to defend the spirit stone mine in case of an ambush. Someone joked that the 8th major event was about to arrive. Do you think you're Yu Qianqiu and can come and go as you please in the fog forest? F***ck. That person laughed. Damn it. I'm Yu Qianqiu in the first place. Do I need to pretend to be myself? Stop bragging. If you're Yu Qianqiu, then tell me what exactly happened in the fog forest. The young cultivator was only saying this casually. Unexpectedly, that person took it seriously. He patted his chest and said loudly, I never lie or brag. I travel the world with my reputation. Let me tell you. What happened in the fog forest wasn't some Shenwei incident. It was a peerless treasure that was about to appear. I saw it with my own eyes. The young cultivator didn't take it seriously at all. Anyway, it was a long night and he was bored. Thus, he joked, then tell me what peerless treasure was about to appear? That person looked at him for a while, then shrugged. Forget it. It doesn't matter if I tell you. You're just a small rogue cultivator. Even if you tell others, no one will believe you. He shook his head and exclaimed, so this fog forest is the burial place of the ancient number 1 expert, Demon Lord of Thousand Swords. I didn't know at first. Coincidentally, I had just broken through to the early stage of tribulation passing and was about to undergo my tribulation. I accidentally attracted the lightning. A bolt of lightning struck down and split open a large ancient tomb. When the second bolt of lightning struck down, the ancient tomb suddenly shot out thousands of golden rays, blocking the heavenly lightning. When the lightning struck again, thousands of golden rays shot up to the sky and dispersed the tribulation clouds. I was so happy. I didn't think I would pass through the tribulation so easily. Really? The young cultivator asked. Then how did you determine that the thousands of golden rays were Demon Lord of Thousand Swords flying swords? That person said with a don't believe me expression. I was curious at the time. I didn't know what helped me pass the tribulation. Thus I went into that ancient tomb. Guess what I saw? Although the young cultivator didn't believe him, he couldn't help but ask because of how interesting his story was. What did you see? That person gestured with his hands and said, it was a huge underground space. The ground was covered with golden bricks. In the middle, there was an altar made of pure gold that was dozens of meters high. Below the altar, there were long swords that were shining with golden rays. On the altar there was a dried corpse. If it wasn't for the inscription on the golden pillar, who could guess that the dried corpse was Demon Lord of Thousand Swords? What did the inscription say? The young cultivator had already forgotten whether he was telling the truth or not. He only wanted to know the ending of the story. It didn't say anything. That person tore a piece of roasted meat and chewed it. Then he drank some wine and said vaguely, Demon Lord of Thousand Swords Transcendence Golden Body. That's all. Demon Lord of Thousand Swords flying swords were stuck under the altar. Did you take a few? No. That person shook his head. Ah, you gave yourself away. If it really was Demon Lord of Thousand Swords flying swords, how could you not take them out? The young cultivator laughed. But that person sneered, you think I didn't want to? The key is that the pressure from the swords is too strong. With my cultivation I can't even get close. If my cultivation reaches the end of the tribulation I might be able to take 1 or 2. The young cultivator smiled and didn't bother to argue with him. Moreover, he couldn't see through the other party's cultivation. If he angered the other party and attacked him, it would be over. Later, that person finished a pot of wine, patted his buttocks and left. The next day, when the young cultivator was chatting with someone, the other party mentioned Shinwei. In order to show off his knowledge, he said that Demon Lord of Thousand Swords flying swords were about to appear. In the end, one person spread to 10 and 10 to 100. In just a few days, everyone in the cultivation world knew about it. After listening to the young cultivator's honest confession, Pu Taidong and the others looked at each other and walked out of the interrogation room. Now, their biggest doubt was whether the person who talked to the young cultivator that night was Yu Qianqiu. According to the tone of the young cultivator, the tone really does sound like Yu Qianqiu, who likes to call himself lousy. Hua Zongming narrowed his eyes and said, "If we can prove that Yu Qianqiu's cultivation has really advanced from the nascent soul stage to the tribulation stage, then that person might really be Yu Qianqiu. Even if it's Yu Qianqiu, so what?" When Pu Taidong mentioned Yu Qianqiu, he gritted his teeth and said hatefully, "Do you think that kid is telling the truth? If there really is such a place, why would he casually tell others when he saw it?" At this moment, the eldest disciple by Meng quickly ran over to report, "Master, there's news from the foot of the mountain. Yu Qianqiu sneak attacked the disciples we sent to the mining site. Out of the dozen people that little junior brother led, he is the only one left alive." The dozen or so soul formation stage experts looked at each other and shook their heads slightly. It seemed that Yu Qianqiu planned to take revenge. Pu Taidong's face turned red and he shouted, "A bunch of useless trash. A dozen or so people can't beat a nascent soul stage cultivator. My old face has been completely lost by you all." Bai Meng didn't dare to say anything. After all, he was the one who lost the most face last time. He just lowered his head and said softly, "I heard little junior brother say that Yu Qianqiu's cultivation has increased greatly. It seems that he has already broken through to the tribulation stage. He doesn't even need to use a flying sword to fly. Even if Yu Qianqiu's cultivation has reached the early tribulation stage, so what? Have you ever seen a late tribulation stage cultivator lose to an early tribulation stage cultivator?" Pu Taidong was still shouting, but Hua Zongming stepped in between the two of them and waved his hand to interrupt. "Bai Meng, you leave first." Chapter 530. Bai Meng glanced at his master's expression and slowly retreated. Yu Qianqiu has already broken through to the early stage of tribulation passing. Interesting. Hua Zongming patted Pu Taidong's shoulder and looked back at the crowd. "What do you think?" Pu Taidong came back to his senses and said in a daze, "In that case, the person talking to this little cultivator might really be Yu Qianqiu?" His gaze swept across the crowd. "Even if it's Yu Qianqiu, you don't really think there's a treasure left behind by the Demon Lord of Thousand Swords in the Misty Forest, do you?" Everyone was silent. There was still some doubt in this matter. They were all thinking about something. "Have you heard of a place?" The one who spoke was Tsang Yuan State's Miao Han Yuan. Everyone looked at him, waiting for him to continue. Miao Han Yuan lightly said, "Immortal Ascension Stage." What? Someone couldn't help but exclaim. Most of the people present were at a loss. They were unfamiliar with this term, but there were a few who were moved. Pu Taidong looked around and frowned. "Miao Han Yuan, what are you trying to say? Don't talk in riddles." Miao Han Yuan glanced at the expressionless Hua Zongming. "I'm sure Brother Hua has heard of this place?" Hua Zongming smiled disapprovingly and didn't say anything. Sikong Ju, who was standing in the crowd, slowly walked out with his hands in his sleeves. "I've heard of this place from my master. Legend has it that in ancient times, when cultivators reached a certain level, they would ascend to the immortal world through a place called the Immortal Ascension Stage. However, this is only a legend. No one knows where it is. Is the Immortal Ascension Stage that Lord Miao is talking about the one I'm talking about?" Hee. As expected of Yin Baikong's brilliant disciple. "You're really knowledgeable." Miao Hanyuan sneered. "I happened to read a record in an ancient book. It says that a certain place is paved with countless gold bricks. In the middle there's a platform built with gold. This platform is called the Immortal Ascension Stage. Cultivators whose cultivation surpasses the soul formation stage can ascend to the immortal world. Brother Hua, am I right?" Hua Zongming chuckled. He knew he couldn't hide it any longer, so he said, "I also thought it was strange. If the person talking to that little cultivator was really Yu Qianqiu, then why is the ancient tomb that Yu Qianqiu mentioned so similar to the legendary Immortal Ascension Stage? The floor is also paved with golden bricks, and there is also a golden platform in the middle. Could it be a coincidence?" "The Immortal Ascension Stage is hidden in the fog forest?" Pu Taidong asked in surprise. Miao Hanyuan narrowed his eyes and said, In my opinion, if this immortal ascension stage really exists, I'm afraid it's either in the East Holy Land or in the dense fog forest. Everyone nodded in agreement. The World Commerce Association even offered a reward of 100 million high-grade spirit stones. Whoever could provide information on Yu Qianqiu and lead the World Commerce Association to find Yu Qianqiu would be able to obtain the 100 million high-grade spirit stones. Of course, whether or not they could catch him was the World Commerce Association's business. As long as the information provided was useful, they could obtain the reward. This time it was lively. The World Commerce Association had used their powerful financial resources to set up informants in the entire cultivation world. Those cultivators with low cultivation could only dream about the treasures of the Myriad Swords Demon Lord. No one thought they could obtain them. However, the reward of 100 million high-grade spirit stones was something that anyone could hope to obtain. For a moment, the various countries were filled with low-level cultivators scurrying around with dreams of getting rich. The cornucopia gathering, which was originally ranked 8th in the cultivation world, was moved back to 9th place. Now, the 8th major event was that the various countries were looking for Yu Qianqiu in order to obtain the treasures left behind by the Myriad Swords Demon Lord. The Jinshan country could be said to be in the eye of this matter because the last time Yu Qianqiu appeared, he was in the Jinshan country. Moreover, the dense fog forest was also within the borders of the Jinshan country. Who dared to say that Yu Qianqiu himself did not want to obtain the treasures left behind by the Myriad Swords Demon Lord? It was said that it was only because his cultivation was not high enough that he could not obtain it. Presumably he was still thinking of a way. Therefore, the chances of finding Yu Qianqiu within the borders of the Jinshan country was the highest. Those cultivators with low cultivation often traveled in groups of 3 to 5. It was precisely because of their low cultivation that they formed groups for safety. At this time, Yu Qianqiu also joined a team of 3 people looking for Yu Qianqiu as a rogue cultivator. In order to dream of getting rich, the 3 people wandered everywhere within the borders of the Jinshan country. Among the 3 people, 2 of them were only at the middle stage of foundation establishment, so Yu Qianqiu claimed to be at the early stage of core formation and showed a little of his skill, subduing the other 2 and becoming the leader of the group of 3. The capital of the Jinshan country, Gold Casting City, in the wilderness dozens of miles north of the city, there was a large connected villa. This villa was originally built by a wealthy businessman for leisure purposes. Later, because it was ransacked by bandits, the entire villa's several hundred people were all killed, and it became an inauspicious place. Coupled with the frequent haunting, this place became the famous Ghost Manor. In fact, the so-called haunting was just a prank made by some rogue cultivators who had nowhere to stay. But over time, the reputation of the Ghost Manor spread, and mortals would definitely keep a respectful distance. Therefore, this place was occupied by rogue cultivators from all over the country. Of course, there was no lack of cultivators with backgrounds from various countries temporarily resting. He looked like a servant in the manor, but since he could control a flying sword, he was clearly not a servant. Yu Qianqiu was startled. He looked at the nursery beds around him. It seemed like it was all thanks to this old man that everything looked so neat and tidy. He actually couldn't see through his cultivation? Yu Qianqiu muttered to himself. He was now in the early stage of the crossing calamity stage. Among the rogue cultivators he had met recently, there were few who had a higher cultivation than him. He didn't expect that an inconspicuous disabled rogue cultivator would have a higher cultivation than him. What surprised him the most was that this old man's cultivation was at least in the middle stage of the crossing calamity stage, but he was doing this rough work here. Yu Qianqiu pinched his chin and frowned. He walked up to the old man and cupped his hands, saying, "May I ask if you are the owner of this place?" Haha. As soon as Yu Qianqiu finished speaking, he heard a lot of laughter around him. He looked around and saw groups of rogue cultivators staring at him and laughing. It was obvious that they were laughing at him. Yu Qianqiu looked at himself and touched his face. He didn't find anything wrong, so he didn't know why they were laughing at him. So he cupped his hands and said, "I'm Yo Yud. I'm new here. Why are you laughing at me? But what did I say or do wrong?" When he said this, he looked at the old man behind him with an inquiring look. However, the old man seemed to be oblivious to his own business and only cared about cutting his own branches. "You don't need to say anything. We also know that you are new here," someone said coldly. Then a group of people laughed again. Yu Qianqiu turned his head and saw several people sitting unsteadily on the railings of a corridor separated by a red-crowned branch eaves. One of them was leaning against a pillar and playing with a bamboo flute in his hand. He glanced at him disdainfully, giving off a cool feeling. Yo. He looks so young, but his cultivation has already reached the early stage of the nascent soul realm. No wonder he learned to look at people sideways. Yu Qianqiu raised his eyebrows. He didn't know what he had done to provoke him, so he pointed at him and asked, "Stupid bird, did you say that just now?" Haha. The laughter around him sounded again, but the faces of those people opposite him didn't look so good. They all stood up and shouted at the same time, "Who are you talking about?" "I say him, there are a few holes in the bamboo, but he's still trying to act cool and make a fool of himself." Yu Qianqiu's tone, as well as his hand gesture, was just short of poking his forehead with his finger. If Nongzhu heard this, she would definitely fight with him. What a joke. What kind of people did Yu Qianqiu usually meet and what kind of things he did? If he randomly picked someone he knew, these guys would look up to him. Chapter 532. He had no ulterior motives. He simply felt that this old man's cultivation was not low, but he was willing to give up ostentatious things to do this rough work. He was worthy of respect. His view of life was that he liked to distinguish good and bad from bad, and to see a person's character from little by little. It was that simple. He definitely did not have any ulterior motives towards this old man. Besides, he did not see how this old man could be taken advantage of. However, his actions caused a flash of surprise to flash across the old man's eyes. Then he threw the wine into his storage bag and continued with his work. The courtyards of large families were indeed deep. After the three of them walked around for a while, they could see groups of 2 or 3 chatting on almost every road. The topics were all Yu Qianqiu and matters related to Mist Forest. Yu Qianqiu's face tightened. There was no need to talk about how depressed he was. He had set a trap for himself and in the end he had fallen into it. Yes, he had deliberately spread the news about the Myriad Swords Demon Lord in Mist Forest. His goal was to gather a bunch of people into Mist Forest, and then ruthlessly slaughter a bunch of them, so that they would not bully others with their numbers. To put it bluntly, he was still angry at being hunted down by thousands of people. Weren't you guys crazy for 2 treasured swords? Then now that I have a treasure of the Myriad Swords Demon Lord, I'm sure it will make you guys even crazier? However, he had miscalculated. This bunch of people had all changed their temperaments. They were very patient and did not make a move. Instead of going to Mist Forest to study how to enter, they had all set their sights on him. Thus, he had tried to seduce them several times in Mist Forest, but they did not fall for it. Instead, they patiently waited for him to come out, prepared to capture him alive, and not prepared to fight him to the death. This caused him to lose his temper, and he could only come out to find a chance to cause trouble. Who knew that after he did not appear, the World Commerce Association became even more despicable. Relying on their wealth, they actually put a bounty of 100 million, causing him to change his appearance again. If he had known this would happen, he would have blackmailed Yin Baikong for a few hundred million. How regretful. What depressed him the most was that in order to make his story about the Myriad Swords Demon Lord more believable, he had used the terrain of the basin to make his story more believable. Who would have thought that those guys would be able to guess that it was the Immortal Ascension stage? Everyone knew of the Immortal Ascension stage, but he had never heard of it. Failure. She followed Qin Jiaxing and Fu Chun as they turned left and right in the manor. Finally, they arrived at a courtyard with a single door that was half covered by grapevines. The green grape seeds were thick and plump and had yet to ripen. The 3 of them walked in. There were indeed 6 rooms inside, 2 facing each other, forming a long cylindrical garden. Looking at the layout, when this family was still prosperous, this should have been a corner where the servants lived. However, in this situation, because it was a private courtyard, there were no people coming and going to disturb him. It was quiet. Under the grape trellis, there was a round stone table. 4 women in pink were sitting and 2 were standing. Before they came in, they could still hear the chatter inside, but now they were all staring at the 3 people who came in. Yu Qianqiu casually glanced at them. Their looks were not bad, but they were still lacking compared to his woman. As she was sizing them up, a woman who was sitting suddenly stood up and walked over with a sneer on her face. She stared at Fu Chun and coldly said, "What? You still haven't given up?" That woman's eyes were big and bright. She had a round face and a sharp chin. With one look, one could tell that she was not someone to be trifled with. Fu Chun and Qin Jiaxing subconsciously shrank back. To them, a disciple of the Misty Rain House of the Passion Lake could kill itinerant cultivators like them as easily as crushing 2 ants. No matter how powerful Boss Nyo was, he could not face a colossus like the Misty Rain House. The Misty Rain House was indeed a colossus in the cultivation world, but the two of them had underestimated their boss. Not to mention the Misty Rain House, Yu Qianqiu had even made a move on the World Commerce Association, which was known as the most powerful force in the cultivation world. Yu Qianqiu's expression immediately darkened. He looked at the two people beside him. These two underlings had really made him proud. They were really not presentable. Especially in front of a woman. With me here they actually dared to cower. He could not help but let out a cold umph. He had been eating and drinking well during this period of time. Fu Chun braced herself and stepped forward saying, "This is our boss. He has personally come to discuss with you." "Boss?" That woman laughed unscrupulously and said, "Mere itinerant cultivators dare to call themselves boss in front of the Misty Rain House? You really don't know what's good for you. Come, let me see how much your boss is worth." As she spoke, she walked closer and sized up Yu Qianqiu. Her slender fingers rolled up her sleeves as if she was really going to teach him a lesson. "Discuss my ass." Yu Qianqiu was enraged. He pulled Fu Chun to the back and stared at the approaching woman with a cold smile. "If you wave that big chest of yours in front of me again, I don't care if you are from the Misty Rain House or not. Be careful that I don't crush it." Once he said that, everyone was shocked. They all suspected that they had heard wrongly. Fu Chun and Qin Jiaxing looked at each other. It seemed that as long as it was a metal, it could be instantly decomposed under the power of the gold spell. A piece of gold could be turned into gold powder, and in a flash, it could be condensed back into a piece of gold. Whether it was dark steel or nether iron, in short, he tried all kinds of metals that he had. He did not know if he did not try, but when he tried he was shocked. This gold spell was too domineering. He tried refining instruments with various metal materials from Qinfeng, but none of them could withstand the power of the gold spell. They were instantly turned into dust. It probably wouldn't rain anymore. After thinking for a while, he nodded and said, "Go, let's join in the fun." Then he pointed at the girls and said, "Don't call me senior anymore." The girls looked at each other. They all knew that he didn't want to expose his identity. The leader Yan Lan nodded and said, "Understood. Don't call me senior, call me mister." The girls saluted at the same time and said, "Greetings, mister." The 6 sweet voices made people's bones go numb. Yu Qianqiu quivered. He waved his hand and said, "Fine, fine, fine. Let's go." He threw a flying sword and stepped on it. His cooperative action instantly reduced the pressure on the girls. They couldn't help but cover their mouths and chuckle. They punched and hit Fu Chun and Qin Jiaxing with their fists and pushed them away. The two of them didn't care about being hit at all. They laughed so hard that they almost couldn't tell north from south. They happily stepped on their swords and chased after Boss. Think about it, if they hadn't met Boss, the Misty Rain Pavilion's female disciples wouldn't have flirted with them. Their days were getting better and better. It was really a happy life as a lone cultivator. The mountain-leaning pavilion was built on a hillside behind Ghost Manor. At the bottom of the hillside was a flat grassland. Under the night sky there was a big bonfire in the middle of the grassland. There were also many small bonfires around it. The lone cultivators came from all over the world. There were all kinds of countries. Actually, the boundaries between countries didn't mean anything to them. That was because they couldn't get any protection from the countries they were born in. They were just lone cultivators who didn't join any sections. How many cultivators who came from sects would pay attention to them? In the cultivation world they were like ants. They wandered around alone and didn't care about the boundaries between countries. While they struggled to find longevity, they could only live and get drunk today. The bonfire roasted the wild game, making the faces of the people near it red. The fragrance of the wine wafted in the wind. The wind of the wilderness blew gently. There was also an unorthodox song full of vicissitudes. Some people sang along. It was a different kind of style that lingered under the mountain-leaning pavilion. When Yu Qianqiu and the others arrived, they immediately attracted many people's attention. Most importantly, the 6 pink-clothed girls' uniforms were too eye-catching. Anyone with a bit of knowledge would know that they were from the Misty Rain Pavilion of Lunan's National Love Lake. Yu Qianqiu looked around. Fu Chun and Qin Jiaxing were on his left and right, and the 6 girls were behind the 3 of them. Many people recognized Yu Qianqiu as the ruffian from earlier in the day, but they didn't understand what he meant. Why would the Misty Rain Pavilion's people surround and protect 3 lone cultivators? There were 4 incandescent cages hanging on the 4 corner pavilions on the hillside. He could clearly see the situation in the pavilion. A one-armed old man was sitting there alone, holding a jar of wine and drinking alone. Chapter 534. The corner of Yu Qianqiu's mouth raised into a smile. He could recognize that the jar of wine was given to him by him. It was indeed a good wine. It was the Yin Wind wine taken from Yu Ji of the Demon Ghost region. It was not a good wine that anyone could drink. The old man's eyes seemed to always look at him intentionally or unintentionally. Their eyes met several times. Yu Qianqiu smiled back, but the old man's eyes were still cold. As a result, Yu Qianqiu was very sullen, so he simply turned around. In front of him, nearly 1,000 people had gathered here. They were drinking and eating to their heart's content, giving off a forthright atmosphere of the Jianghu. This was a feeling that Yu Qianqiu liked very much, and it made him feel much better. Heaven, earth, I am here drifting, where can I go? Under the starry night sky, under the bonfire, some people bared their teeth and brandished their claws around the bonfire, dancing a strange dance like a big crab. Some people even took out their flying swords and hit them with a clanking sound, singing a wild tune with their mouths. It was a pure man's tune. Pride and frustration were roared out from their throats. Even if they were drunk, they would still wake up. Although the world was big, tomorrow they would still be unknown little rogue cultivators. You are from the Misty Rain Tower, right? Let us help you. Several people sitting around on the side had been staring here. Seeing the 6 women doing rough work, someone finally couldn't help but start to strike up a conversation. As soon as they opened their mouth, 7 or 8 wolf-like men couldn't wait to get up and rush over here. Get out of here. Hazy Haze roared, scaring several people and making them sit back down. This caused the surrounding people to roar with laughter. Although the laughter was forthright, there was some bitterness hidden in it. It was not known whether they were laughing at those people who were defeated or laughing at themselves for wanting to eat swan meat. Several women were busy around Yu Qianqiu's feet. Yu Qianqiu stood there with his arms crossed, tilting his head to look at the movement just now. There was a faint smile on his face, and he was not angry because of those people's collision just now. In his previous life he had started out as a commoner, so he naturally had a better understanding of the mentality of the small fry. These people clearly wanted to curry favor with the Misty Rain Pavilion's female disciple, hoping to gain a favorable impression of them and escape their lonely status as independent cultivators. If he was like them now, would he also want to rely on this method to get a higher position? Yu Qianqiu looked into the distance. The answer in his heart was no. He admitted that he was not a good person. Perhaps the methods he used were more bloody, violent, or evil, but he would never use such a method. Because he was ambitious, daring to think, daring to work hard, daring to risk his life, daring to challenge an unfair fate, and unswerving determination to move forward, he was destined to have a bigger stage. If he couldn't succeed, he would just have to die. That was how a man should be. Crawling under a woman's skirt, wagging his tail to beg for pity, or to win sympathy, were just small tricks. Once he did that, the road he had to walk would be even more bumpy, and he would have to endure even more humiliation. At this moment, Fu Chun and Qin Jiaxing each carried a large bundle of firewood back, and they even carried a pheasant and a wild hare in their hands. They showed off to the women, and their faces were full of smiles. This caused the women to cheer, and they grabbed the firewood and prepared to barbecue it. Yu Qianqiu's eyes flickered as he looked at the two of them, and he backed off, making space in the middle for them to pile the firewood. After the bonfire was lit, the few of them sat around it. The 3 men here could be said to be a thorn in everyone's side, and they were too enviable. There was a man between every 2 women, and there were 2 other women who were busy barbecuing. Yu Qianqiu took out a few jars of good wine and threw them to the few of them. He picked up the wine jars, removed the clay seals, and drank to his heart's content. After that, he put down the wine jars and attentively listened to the conversations around him. Damn it! His limelight had been stolen by these girls. Yu Qianqiu cursed in his heart, and realized that the people around him were all talking about the 6 women around him, and it seemed like all of them wanted to get close to him. Fortunately, there was still a group of people talking about business. Forget it. Don't look. No matter how delicious the meat is, we can't bite it. Let's talk about that Yu Qianqiu. What's the use of talking about him? That butcher is hiding somewhere, and it's really easy to find him. Have you heard? World Commerce's Guanzhongkai has already brought a large amount of reward money, and is holding down the fort in Gold Casting City. If anyone can get news of Yu Qianqiu, they can directly report it. It's not just Guanzhongkai. I heard that there are also 8 World Commerce's late-stage tribulation passing experts following him. That's nothing. It said that Yin Baikong's eldest disciple, Sikongju, is leading a large group of world commerce's experts to await orders. As long as they find Yu Qianqiu, they will personally come out. If that's the case, then world commerce is determined to get him. Of course, world commerce's wealth is unparalleled, and world commerce's influence is the greatest in the world. Yin Baikong's cultivation is one of the top 10 experts in the cultivation world. Look, that woman's breasts are really big. Damn. This can also change the topic. I don't know. In any case, I heard from some wandering cultivators that he has always been here. I don't know when he started. Yu Qianqiu looked at Fu Chun, but he also shook his head to show that he didn't know. On the other hand, Yan Lan frowned and said, "This senior's identity is very mysterious. He never talks to anyone and doesn't easily hurt anyone. Therefore there are rumors that he is deaf and mute. As for whether it's true or not, I don't know. Anyway, that's what everyone says." But what? Yu Qianqiu asked curiously. Yan Lan hesitated for a while and said, "The Misty Rain Tower has made it clear that none of our disciples are allowed to cause trouble in Ghost Village. They are also not allowed to be rude to this old man. Otherwise they will be severely punished." Yu Qianqiu was surprised and re-examined the one-armed old man. Yan Lan then asked softly, "Mister, with your experience, you still don't know where he came from?" *CK. I don't have any experience at all. Yu Qianqiu stammered, "N. Woo woo woo." Suddenly, the sound of a flute was heard and joined the flute. It sounded like a flute and a flute were playing together. Everyone looked towards the source of the sound. A person stood up next to the bonfire and blew the flute at the green-veiled woman in the mountain-leaning pavilion. Yu Qianqiu tilted his head and was startled. It was the B*TCH who almost made him attack her earlier in the day. He didn't expect her to be acting cool here again. However, listening to the sound, he realized that the flute in this person's hand wasn't just for fun. He actually knew a bit about music and filled in the gaps in the woman's song. For a moment, it complemented each other and made the song even more pleasant to listen to. However, the four people next to the person seemed a bit disappointed. "Good. It's so nice." They all clapped and cheered. Their flattery could drown an elephant. In the end, the flute in front of the mountain-leaning pavilion stopped playing. The woman had already put down the flute in her hand and seemed to be silently watching the scene below. The sound of the flute immediately became monotonous. Fang Ming also stopped playing and glared at the four people next to him. The four people immediately quieted down awkwardly. Fang Ming straightened his expression and walked out from the crowd. He walked towards the mountain-leaning pavilion and stopped at the foot of the hill. He cupped his hands together and said, "I am Fang Ming, a rogue cultivator. I suddenly heard the sounds of nature and couldn't help but play together with it. I hope you don't mind my rudeness." After he spoke politely, it seemed like the woman didn't want to talk to him anymore. The night wind blew against her green veil, but she didn't move an inch. Suddenly, a burst of laughter came from below. Someone whispered, "Look, another guy who wants to eat swan meat." Chapter 535. Roars of laughter rang out, and Yu Qianqiu shook his head with a bitter smile. Fang Ming's four companions couldn't take it anymore. They all stood up and looked around. "Who is it? Come out and speak if you have the guts." "So what if I said it?" Three people also stood up not far away. One of them sneered, "Is this Ghost Manor your family's territory? You don't even allow us to speak?" Yu Qianqiu looked at the three people and found that they were all nascent soul cultivators. The one who spoke was even at the middle stage of nascent soul. These three people's cultivations were not low compared to rogue cultivators. When Fang Ming's four companions saw who it was, their expressions stiffened and they stood there awkwardly. It was obvious that they were afraid of the three people. Fu Chun smiled and softly said, "Boss, these three people are somewhat famous among the rogue cultivators. I heard that they are all at the nascent soul stage. The one who spoke is called Tian Yi." At the bottom of the hill, Fang Ming's expression changed. He slowly said to his companions, "Don't cause trouble in the Ghost Manor. All of you sit down." Although these words were said to his own people, everyone could tell that it was a warning to the three people. Yu Qianqiu picked up the wine jar and drank a mouthful. He looked at Fang Ming and smiled. Aside from acting cool, this guy's adaptability was pretty good. He was much better than some of the disciples from the big sections. He knew that his side was no match for the other party, so he used the Ghost Manor to scold his own people. In reality, he was reminding the other three that the Ghost Manor was not a place where they could mess around. After being scolded, the four people sat down in embarrassment. Fang Ming turned around and put on a warm smile. He cupped his hands and said, Miss, please don't take it to heart. They are all uncultured people. Please forgive them for disturbing your mood. Although he didn't criticize them by name, he basically put the label of uncultured on everyone's head. However, there weren't many people who knew how to be cultured. Even if they didn't know how to be cultured, it wasn't his turn to say it. What right do you have to use everyone as a stepping stone to climb up the tree? Who do you think you are? These words were indeed a little too broad. Even Yu Qianqiu frowned. However, Fengya was pure bullshit*t to him. He knew that he was constantly cursing and swearing. He had nothing to do with Fengya at all. His mentality was different now. If it was a more powerful guy who said that, he might jump out and fight back. But now, a small grasshopper would not be able to overturn the heavens. However, the majority of the people were not happy. They spat and cursed. Even the veiled woman on the hill slowly turned around with the intention of leaving. The one-armed old man stepped aside to make way. The bonfires below were crackling. While the crowd was still in shock, Yu Qianqiu calmly picked up a piece of dry wood and threw it into the bonfire. Watching the rising red flames, he sighed in his heart. He used to hang out with the upper-class people in the cultivation world every day. He didn't know how many times he had quarreled with Nongzhu and how many times he had argued with him. However, when he said the name Mr. Nongzhu, so many people didn't even dare to breathe heavily. It was really awesome. What he didn't know was that when he said the name Yu Qianqiu, it could also shock these rogue cultivators. What a joke. Yu Qianqiu had killed more than 2,000 cultivators from different countries, all of whom were above the original infant stage. He had become famous in the cultivation world. He was the butcher of the cultivation world. What was different from Nongzhu was that one was famous all over the world and everyone was in awe of him. On the other hand, he was famous all over the world and everyone was afraid of him. Two pairs of eyes on the hillside had been secretly watching his actions. Compared with the shocked expressions of the crowd, his indifferent look seemed a little out of place. Brother Tian, you're right. I really can't be compared with Mr. Nongzhu. I was rude. Fang Ming chuckled and blamed himself. But looking at him, he didn't seem to blame himself at all. He was obviously proud. Looking around, he saw that the veiled woman was also listening, so he said with great interest, "Of course, although I'm not elegant, I've been deeply influenced by Mr. Nongzhu's elegant demeanor since I met him. So I made up my mind to learn from famous songs everywhere. My hard work paid off and finally I got a few peerless masterpieces. I wonder if you're interested in listening to them?" The elegant demeanor of Nongzhu? Why don't I know about it? What's the difference between that guy and a rascal? Elegant my ass. Yu Qianqiu's face twitched and he cursed in his heart. The crowd looked at each other and found that this place had become a place for him to perform. But they didn't know what relationship he had with Mr. Nongzhu, so they just stopped talking. Fang Ming's brothers naturally wouldn't let Fang Ming remain silent. They all cheered, "Of course we do. We're waiting to listen. I wonder what peerless masterpieces they are." Fang Ming laughed heartily and spoke to the crowd in a graceful manner. "Everyone is probably here for Yu Qianqiu, right? But you should know that although Yu Qianqiu is cruel and merciless, and is hunted by many countries, he's a peerless genius in music." Yu Qianqiu. Hearing this, everyone immediately whispered to each other. They really hadn't heard anything about Yu Qianqiu. "You asked me, I asked you, but no one had heard of him." Yu Qianqiu slightly opened his mouth in astonishment. He thought to himself, "Why are you talking about me?" Could it be that the peerless masterpieces he mentioned are? He vaguely guessed something. The awkward atmosphere was stirred up in an instant. Everyone was quite interested in the topic of Yu Qianqiu. Not many people here know about these songs. I spent a lot of effort to get them from the Chinese cultivation world. Fang Ming suddenly shook his head and sighed. The song White Fox is heartbreaking. I really want all the heartless men in the world to listen to it. The song Mandarin Duck and Butterfly Dream makes people feel like they're in a gentle dream. It's as if the clouds are parted and the blue sky is revealed. When the song ends, people wake up, but the tear stains are still there. The song, Laughing at the World of Mortals, laughs at all the funny things in the world. The vicissitudes of life are like passing wind and clouds. All I want is to be free and unfettered in this life. When the veiled woman at the side of the pavilion heard these words, her shoulders seemed to subconsciously move. And Yu Qianqiu was even more dumbfounded. Wow! Why didn't I know that these three songs were so charming? This guy's eloquence was just too good. If he can't get a girl, then he's really heartless. I'll just bang my head against the wall and die. Everyone present was tempted by his words. They couldn't wait to ask him to hurry up and sing to see what kind of song could make him so melancholy. However, they wanted to continue listening to his next words so they didn't disturb him. He sighed and said, "Yu Qianshou, what kind of person are you? Perhaps being unruly and ruthless is just your surface. Underneath that strong exterior of yours is a sentimental heart. The world is drunk, but you're the only sober one. You walk through the turbid world with cold eyes. Do you have a bosom friend? Sigh. I Fang Ming have been longing for you for a long time. It's a pity that I've only heard of you. You're a peerless genius. What a pity. Damn it. Is this stupid bird who acts cool my bosom friend? Why didn't I know I was so good?" Yu Qianshou bit his lips and his face twitched. He was almost moved to tears by Fang Ming's words. He cursed in his heart, "What the hell?" On the hillside, the red lips under the green veil raised a beautiful arc. Obviously, she was also smiling, but the others could not see it. If it were someone else, Fang Ming would have taught him a lesson. However, it was this guy who wanted to teach him a lesson during the day. Fang Ming could only swallow his anger. However, his face was not good. He said in a low voice, "It's okay if you don't take me seriously, but don't tarnish Mr. Nongzhu and Yu Qianshou." This guy was good at talking. It was obvious that he was using the two gods to suppress the other party. However, when it came to talking, Yu Qianshou was not afraid of anyone at all. Moreover, Yu Qianshou did not take the two gods seriously at all. It was useful to scare other rogue cultivators, but it was really a mistake to scare Yu Qianshou. Is there something wrong with your brain? Don't use others to support you. When did I tarnish Nongzhu and Yu Qianshou? Yu Qianshou thought that he had never seen someone so protective of his grandson. He drank a mouthful of wine, picked up a half-eaten drumstick, pointed at Fang Ming and said, "Anyway, even if I tarnish Nongzhu and Yu Qianshou, it's none of your business. I did tarnish them. What's wrong with that? If the two bastards have a problem with it, tell them to come to me. Don't meddle in other people's business." His words were so arrogant that Fang Ming was speechless. He did not mention Yu Qianshou. Fang Ming thought that he could scare Nongzhu by mentioning Nongzhu, but he dared to curse Nongzhu by mentioning her name. It seemed that he was not afraid that his words would fall into Nongzhu's ears. It was impossible for Yu Qianshou to be afraid. He had scolded Nongzhu many times in front of her, not to mention behind her back. Fu Chun and Qin Jiaxing looked at each other. Their boss was so awesome. No wonder his family name was Niu. Yen Lan and the other girls were full of admiration. This senior might be even more powerful than Mr. Nongzhu. Otherwise, who would dare to curse a master at the middle stage of Huashan realm like this? The place suddenly became quiet. Only the crackling of the bonfire could be heard. Everyone was searching for the name Niu Yid in their minds, but it seemed that they had never heard of him. On the other side, Tianai, who was scared by Fang Ming mentioning Nongzhu, felt even more ashamed now. Look at Fang Ming's courage and then look at his own courage. Fang Ming's face darkened as he stared at the man who continued to eat and drink after cursing him. Suddenly, as if he had thought of something, he tossed the flute in his hand into his storage pouch and pulled out a zither. Then, he slowly sat down cross-legged in front of the veiled woman on the hill. Seeing that he put the guqin on his knees, everyone was immediately interested. They knew that he was going to play the song he mentioned just now. Yu Qianshou glanced at him and thought, this guy is really talented. He can play both the flute and the guqin. Although cultivators from different countries are hunting Yu Qianshou, I still think that he is a peerless genius that only appears once in 1,000 years. I love music, but I have no chance to learn from him in person. The few songs that I have learned are only paraphrased by others. I didn't get the complete song, so I had to compose a song myself. I hope I won't disturb you. As soon as Fang Ming finished speaking, his four brothers cheered again. He continued, "It is said that the song White Fox was written by Yu Qianshou when he first joined the cultivation world of Huaxia. He met a white fox that had been cultivating for 1,000 years. Feeling the misery of the fox's life, Yu Qianshou gave it to the fox girl. This song has been sung in the cultivation world of Huaxia for a long time. Please listen carefully." The sound of the zither rang out slowly. After a prelude, Fang Ming sang softly with the sound of the zither, "I am a fox that has cultivated for 1,000 years. 1,000 years of cultivation, 1,000 years of solitude. In the dead of night, can anyone hear me crying? In the dim light, can anyone see me dancing?" The night was quiet and the song was lonely. It had to be said that Fang Ming was indeed skilled. As expected of a specialist, his singing was indeed touching. Even Yu Qianshou's eyes were filled with confusion. He recalled the first time he met Bai Sujin. As soon as the song was played, everyone was immersed in the heartbreaking song and music. From the lyrics, they could feel the misery of the white fox that had been cultivating for 1,000 years. The heart-wrenching scene of, "Can I dance for you again?" appeared in everyone's minds. Yu Qianqiu was awakened by the girls beside him. They could not help but let out soft sobs. Their eyes were red and glistened with tears. The rest of the people were also sighing. When the song was over, everyone was still immersed in the song. They shook their heads. It was a very emotional scene. "Senior sister, that white fox is so pitiful." The hot-tempered Haze threw herself into Yanlan's arms and cried bitterly. Fu Chun and Qin Jiaxing were also in a daze. They had long forgotten to eat the roasted meat in their hands. Yu Qianqiu was speechless. He could not help but sigh at the lack of spiritual food in this world. A song could move people to this extent. Fang Ming glanced at the girl on the hillside. It seemed that she did not have any reaction. Even if she did, it was blocked by the curtain of green silk. He looked around and said loudly, "What do you guys think of this song? Is Yu Qianqiu a genius?" "He is." The group of rogue cultivators roared in response. Some of them even exclaimed, "I didn't expect this. That butcher of the cultivation world actually knows how to play this song. Not only does he know how to play, even an uncouth man like me likes it. It's completely different from the ah sounds I used to hear. It makes me want to sleep. Tisk tsk. If I have the chance, I really want to meet this Yu Qianqiu and see what he looks like. Damn it. I'm sitting right here. You guys have eyes but failed to recognize Mount Tai." Yu Qianqiu looked around. For the first time he felt that being Yu Qianqiu was good. He wanted to stand up and tell everyone that he was Yu Qianqiu. The song is born from the heart. How bad can a person who can make such a song be? He must have been forced to do it. Fang Ming sighed. The result made everyone sigh again. Everyone knew that the reason why Yu Qianqiu killed the 2,000 cultivators was because the sects were hunting him for his treasures. Now that they thought about it again, they felt some sympathy for him. That Yu Qianqiu was forced to kill them because he had no other choice. The dream of the mandarin ducks and butterflies. It is said that this song was given to the vixen after Yu Qianqiu composed it. After hearing this song, the vixen's sorrow disappeared and she floated away. No one has seen her since. At this point, Fang Ming shook his head and sighed. Speaking of which, although the white fox's fate was tragic, 2 of the 3 songs composed by Yu Qianqiu were actually given to her. It was really enviable. That white fox has no regrets in her life. Sigh. How enviable. I wonder who else in this world can make Yu Qianqiu compose a 4th song. He didn't know that Yu Qianqiu had actually made a song public when he was training in the Demon Ghost region. However, in order to hide the secret of the training in the Demon Ghost region, the sect strictly forbade their disciples from mentioning it, so the song didn't spread outside. Fang Ming, quickly sing Butterfly and Mandarin Duck Dream. This time, there was no need for Fang Ming's 4 brothers to liven up the atmosphere. Everyone couldn't wait any longer and shouted, "Yes. Yes. Quickly sing it." Yu Qianqiu looked around and saw the 6 women staring at Fang Ming with shining eyes like 6 female dogs in heat. This made Yu Qianqiu curse in his heart. Damn it, singing my song to show off. He suddenly remembered that he was also a pirate singer and was speechless. How dare I disobey everyone's orders? Fang Ming smiled and plucked the strings of the zither. After the beautiful prelude, he sang with a hint of melancholy, "Yesterday was like the east flowing water, far away from me and can't stay. Today my heart is in chaos and worries. If I cut the water with a knife, it will flow even more. If I drink to drown my worries, it will make me worry even more. If I cut the water with a knife, it will flow even more. If I drink to drown my worries, it will make me worry even more." Under the night sky, the bonfire flickered. The group of people was relaxed and happy, and their hearts trembled with every word of the lyrics. The feeling of cutting the water with a knife, the feeling of powerlessness to drown one's worries, seemed to have been experienced by everyone. The song vividly interpreted the artistic conception. It couldn't be described with the word, wonderful. No one had ever heard such a divine song. At the end of the song, many people looked at the wine pot in their hands and murmured, "If I drink to drown my worries, it will make me worry even more." What a beautiful song. The tears on Hazy Haze's face hadn't dried yet. She crossed her arms and said in annoyance, "Yu Qianqiu, where are you? It would be good if I could see you. You can't die." The other women were even more stunned. Even Yanlan murmured as if she was in a dream, "If I cut the water with a knife, it will make me laugh even more." This Yu Qianqiu is really a wise man who has seen through all kinds of life. In just a few words he has described the joys and sorrows of a man and a woman. Every word is a gem. Dream of mandarin ducks and butterflies. The title of the song is so beautiful. Yin Fei bent her legs and supported her chin with her hands. Her eyes flashed with dreamy brilliance and said, I really want to see what Yu Qianqiu looks like now. Yes. Yin Qing said in a daze, I think he must be a handsome man. A group of love-struck fools. I'm sitting right next to you. Yu Qianqiu rolled his dead fish eyes and looked back and forth at the 6 women unwillingly. Then he took a big bite of the drumstick in his hand. He looked like he wanted to tear the drumstick into pieces. After a few big bites he put the bone in his mouth and chewed on it. Fang Ming smiled and looked around. The atmosphere was finally under his control again. Tonight was destined to be his night. He said in a clear voice, what do you think after listening to these 2 songs? Now you know that what I said is true. Not bad, this Yu Qianqiu is really something, a real talent, a real master. Even I, a rough guy, admire him from the bottom of my heart. Good song, he really is a genius. Everyone's praises came one after another. It was practically endless. Fang Ming nodded and said, the song is good, the melody is good, and every word of the lyrics is like a jewel. I'm afraid only Yu Qianqiu could come up with such a song. Moreover, he matched it so well that it's unforgettable. What's more, it's said that this is Yu Qianqiu's impromptu work. He's really a genius. Yu Qianqiu drank his wine gloomily. He really did not know what to say. This was the first time he was praised by so many people. Especially Fang Ming, who praised him as if he was the best in the world. Yu Qianqiu should be happy, but he could see that Fang Ming was clearly playing a trick. He was pouring water on Yu Qianqiu and then propping up his broken boat. As the saying goes, a good song needs a good tune. Fang Ming said at the beginning that he got the song from the cultivation world in China. The tune was not complete and he composed it himself. The more he made everyone think that this song was rare, the more they would think that his talent would be revealed when they thought about it. This kid is really something. He's even more shameless than me. Yu Qianqiu snorted coldly in his heart. Fang Ming composed the tune? It's obvious that he did it step by step. He's bullying everyone here because they haven't heard it before. I'm afraid he's going to play some tricks to make his wish come true. Yu Qianqiu glanced at the veiled woman on the hillside. She was the target that Fang Ming was trying his best to capture. I won't allow any bastard to take advantage of me to pick up girls. What he didn't know was that the eyes behind the veil were staring at him. Especially his cultivation that could not be seen through, it was very eye-catching. Basically, those who had interacted with him for a period of time knew that he was born this way. It was not because of a momentary lapse in judgment. Fang Ming, let's not talk about it. Sing that, laughing at the world of mortals again. Yeah. Sing it quickly. Let's hear it again. The group of people were already addicted to it. They could not wait to hear the 3rd song, so they all urged. However, just as Yu Qianqiu expected, that guy began to play the trick of fishing for mermaids. Fang Ming slowly stood up and put away his guqin. He cupped his hands and apologized to the crowd. Everyone, I'm really sorry. Let's stop here for today. We'll talk again if there's a chance in the future. Because this 3rd song is a masterpiece among masterpieces. If I don't adjust my emotions before singing it, it'll be a stain on this masterpiece. I really don't want to do such a thing. I hope that you won't force it. It's not like you can force it. As soon as these words came out, everyone sighed with regret. Someone even shouted, how about tomorrow? At most, I'll wait another day before I leave. I want to listen to this masterpiece among masterpieces of masterpieces. Fang Ming replied in a cultured and refined manner, let's talk about it another day, another day. He did not give a definite answer from beginning to end. As he said this, he walked back to where he came from. His 4 brothers cheered and cheered loudly. You're called Fang Ming, right? Suddenly, a cold snort sounded out. Fang Ming paused and looked toward the source of the sound. It was the guy who opposed him during the day. He reluctantly nodded and said, that's right. What can I do for you? Advice my ass. Yu Qianqiu looked him up and down in disdain. He said, Fang Ming, Fang Ming. From the sound of this name, it should be a righteous person who does things openly and honorably. It's a disgrace to a liar like you with this name. Everyone was taken aback. They did not know where he was coming from. Fang Ming's expression changed. He said in a deep voice, what did I lie to you about? Isn't this the first time we've met? Kid, you're asking for trouble by being so stubborn in front of me. Yu Qianqiu sneered and said, let me ask you. You said that in the song you just sang, the zither song was composed by you? Fang Ming was nervous, but he forced himself to be calm. That's right. Hee hee. As luck would have it, I've heard Yu Qianqiu sing these two songs with my own ears. Although his unparalleled and divine skills are indeed thousands of times better than yours, and you are like trash compared to him, but why do I feel that the tunes you two play are almost the same? Was it you who composed them? Could it be that Yu Qianqiu stole your zither song? Yu Qianqiu said with extreme malice. Chapter 537. Of course, at the same time, he didn't forget to praise himself. No one knew who he was anyway, so he should praise him. Don't hold back. He praised Yu Qianqiu to death. Everyone was in an uproar when they heard this. Then they began to whisper to each other and looked at Fang Ming in confusion. After listening to him play two songs, everyone was still thinking about it. Although they knew that he was showing off, they were still amazed by him. Now that they suddenly heard this, they felt as if they had swallowed a fly. Fang Ming's four brothers stood up and waved their arms in anger. How dare you? Where did this madman come from? Niu Yi, don't spout nonsense. Yu Qianqiu turned to the four of them and said indifferently, don't think that no one dares to touch you in the ghost village. I don't care if it's a ghost village or a god village. Try pointing fingers at me again. Do you believe that I won't pull out your tongues and knock out your teeth right now? Fu Chun and Qin Jiaxing winked at each other. They seemed to be a little excited. This boss was too awesome. The six women looked at each other. They already knew that Niu Yi was a soul formation stage master, so they didn't doubt that he would do what he said. The four men's faces were flushed red. They didn't dare to make the first move, so they definitely wanted to save face with their words. However, they were stopped by Fang Ming. Fang Ming was a smart man. He could tell that this person's words and actions weren't just for fun. His eyes were filled with indifference, as if he viewed human life as nothing more than grass. He would definitely kill anyone if they didn't get along. Most importantly, they might not be a match for this person. Why do you want to cause trouble for me again and again? Have I offended you in the past? Fang Ming asked loudly. It was a very smart question. The meaning behind it was obvious. He was telling everyone that this wasn't the first time this person had caused trouble for him. He was slandering him again. Those who saw the two arguing during the day also nodded slightly. They suspected that this Niu Yi was really causing trouble for Fang Ming. Cause trouble for you? Yu Qianqiu said disdainfully, do you think you're worth my trouble? If I really wanted to cause trouble for you, you would have lost your life long ago. How could you have the chance to swindle and deceive everyone? He was telling the truth. If it wasn't for the fact that he wanted to keep a low profile, he wouldn't have let Fang Ming off during the day. In his eyes, the people of the cultivation world had already obtained far, far more than mortals, especially those who harbored evil intentions. It was fine if they didn't cause trouble, but once they did, the harm they suffered would be much greater than that of mortals. Therefore, to him it was better to kill than to spare. The word sympathy was something he had never even thought about. However, he thought that he was low-key, but in reality he was the kind of person who couldn't be low-key even if he wanted to. His entire body was covered with hard thorns that would stab people no matter where he was placed. With this kind of character, how could he keep a low profile? Who knows? I believe that you have the ability to kill me. Fang Ming glanced at the veiled woman beside the leaning mountain pavilion and said in a deep voice, you keep saying that I'm a liar, but you should at least show me the evidence. You can't accuse me of being a liar just because of what you said. That's a little too ridiculous. He could be considered to have swallowed his anger. Even after being ridiculed, he still maintained a certain degree of politeness. There was nothing he could do about it. The other party dared to turn against him, but he didn't dare to. Evidence? Yu Qianqiu raised an eyebrow and said, I've already said that I've heard Yu Qianqiu play and sing these two songs with my own ears. This is the best evidence. Then I'll have to trouble you to prove that you've heard Yu Qianqiu play and sing these two songs, Fang Ming said calmly. That's easy. Yu Qianqiu casually waved his hand and said, the last time I was still in Dayang City, 3rd XN from Lingfang Valley brought Yu Qianqiu to visit me. At that time, the three of them were in high spirits after drinking, and the Thousand Sorrows zither song livened up the mood. They played and sang more than 10 songs in a row, and those songs were like the sounds of nature, making people gasp in admiration. Among those songs you played and sang. If you don't believe me, you can go to Lingfang Valley and ask 3rd XN. Then you'll know that I'm not lying. Fang Ming choked and was stunned. Asking him to look for 3rd XN, he had to have the qualifications to do so. Who was 3rd XN? He was an expert in the late tribulation passing stage, his brother was in the early soul forming stage, and his master was one of the 4 great men of the cultivation world. How could he have the qualifications to ask questions? It was already good enough that he could meet him. The itinerant cultivators looked at each other, trying to figure out Niu Yid's background. They had never heard of this person before, and even Third Xin and Yu Qianqiu wanted to visit him. It was obvious that he had an extraordinary background. Although Fu Chun and Qin Jiaxing didn't say a word, their faces were filled with pride. The 2 of them basked in the glory of their boss and enjoyed the feeling of being the center of attention for the first time. In the past, even among the itinerant cultivators, the 2 of them were nameless people. How could they receive so much attention? This feeling was really good, as if he had followed the right person. Fang Ming wanted to say something but stopped himself. In the end, he shut his mouth. Even if he was stubborn, he had to have the capital to do so. Not to mention that he couldn't see through the other party's cultivation. His background was even more mysterious. This kind of person was not someone a small itinerant cultivator like him could afford to offend. If he lost his life before he could eat the swan meat, it would be really not worth it. However, he saw a scene that he shouldn't have seen. Just as Niu Yid was talking about third brother Xin, the masked woman next to the mountain-leaning pavilion with a green veil lightly took a few steps forward. With every step she took, the night breeze brushed against the green muslin. Under the influence of the wind, the green muslin skirt wrapped around the contours of her slender legs. The exquisite curves on her upper body were even more captivating. The hazy curves could make all things pale in comparison with each step she took, and each step was enough to stop one's breathing. Everyone followed Fang Ming's gaze and held their breaths, staring fixedly at the woman. Although this mysterious woman's face was covered, the green veil was unable to conceal the allure of her body as she moved. They did not see her devastatingly beautiful face, nor did they hear her melodious words. This was because she had not said a word since she arrived. There was no pretentiousness to deliberately display the charm of a woman. Everything was done so inadvertently. With a few graceful steps, she vividly interpreted the word beauty. The mountain-leaning pavilion under the night sky, the incandescent light and the one-armed old man, everything became an illusory background. Everyone's attention was focused on the woman in green veil. The bright moonlight was blocked by the drifting dark clouds, and the moon seemed to be too shy to peep at the woman below. Bonfires were lit everywhere, shining brightly. The burning firewood made crackling sounds as if to remind everyone to come back to their senses. However, everyone was still immersed in a daze. After a long time, the group of people who had almost suffocated to death finally remembered the matter of breathing. They swallowed their saliva and took big gulps of air mixed with the fragrance of wine. However, their gazes were still fixed on the woman in green veil. Damn it! She could bring disaster to the country and people by not showing her face. This could be considered as putting the moon to shame. Yu Qianqiu, who came back to his senses, looked up at the sky and found that even the moon had disappeared. He drank a mouthful of wine, looked around at the group of people who were stunned, and shook his head with a bitter smile. In his mind, the few women who were waiting for his return appeared, and he felt that he owed them too much. The night wind was a little cold, but the bonfires were still burning. Yu Qianqiu's body leaned back slightly. He supported himself with one hand on his back and one of his legs retracted. His other hand was placed on his knee, holding a jar of wine and gently shaking it. The wine was poured into his mouth from time to time, and the bright red light from the fire made the faint longing in his eyes and face unmistakable. The masked woman in green veil was watching his every move. When she found that he did not fit in with the crowd, her eyes revealed a trace of surprise. In her impression, there was no need to mention her own charm, and it was rare to see such a man. Of course, there was also that person, that arrogant legendary figure who was also an exception. That person was too arrogant to the bones. However, that person did indeed have the qualifications to be arrogant to the point of ignoring everything. What beauty in his eyes, was just a skeleton. When it was time to make a move, there was no reason to talk. So beautiful. Yanxia said dreamily, looking at the dazed looks of the men around her. She slightly lowered her head to look at the big chest that she was usually proud of, and subconsciously shrank her chest. For the first time, she found that it was really stupid to rely on big breasts to attract men's attention. Look at him, he just took a few steps, and the effect was far more attractive than her own chest. It is very beautiful. Yanlan let out a sigh. After all, these women were women, so they were the first to come back to their senses, but their faces all showed a look of shame. The sound of the wine being drunk attracted the eyes of the women. The women were surprised to find that Senior Niu Yid was indeed a master, and he was not on the same level as the stinky men around him. The charm of the masked woman was hard to resist even for women like them. Unexpectedly, Senior Nyoye did not even look at her, and drank leisurely by himself. He was really a knowledgeable senior. Sir, do you think that the masked woman is not beautiful? Yinxia was a little curious and dared to ask. The eyes of the women were cast together, and they also wanted to know the opinion of this senior. Yu Qianqiu came back to his senses and asked, "What?" Yinxia timidly asked the question again. Yu Qianqiu didn't think much of it and said, "It should be okay. Women are beautiful in my eyes, but I haven't seen her face. How do I know if she is beautiful or not?" Yinxia slightly pouted as if she was not very satisfied with this answer and asked again, "Does Sir only look at the face to see whether a woman is beautiful or not? Her figure is also very important." Yu Qianqiu was stunned, his eyes glanced at her chest, and then sent the wine jar in his hand to her sensitive part and said with a smile, "Of course, the figure is very important. I like women with big breasts. Just looking at them makes me feel good, and taking them off is even more. The figure is very important and your figure is very beautiful, hee hee. Very beautiful, very beautiful." Chapter 538. Hazy Haze's face turned red. Under the light of the fire, it became more and more red. She covered her chest with her arms, trying to block Yu Qianqiu's gaze. She whispered, "I'm not talking about me." The other women were seduced by these words and subconsciously looked at their chests. They also crossed their arms to cover their chests. Their cheeks were all red and they all muttered in their hearts, "This Senior Nyo doesn't know how to restrain himself when acting like a hooligan." Many people's gazes had already been attracted by the three words big breasts. Fu Chun and Qin Jiaxing were even more dumbfounded. The two of them really didn't expect that their boss would actually dare to say such a thing in front of so many people. They immediately threw the veiled beauty to the back of their minds and looked at this rare animal like their boss. "What are you looking at?" Yu Qianqiu glared at the two of them and then awkwardly explained to Hazy Haze, "It was a slip of the tongue, a slip of the tongue, I absolutely didn't mean anything else." However, the figures of the women shrank, a little bit to guard against thieves. Especially their eyes, they obviously didn't believe that he had made a slip of the tongue. "Damn. I obviously want to flatter you, but you actually treat me as a pervert." Yu Qianqiu opened his mouth and shook his head speechlessly. He was too lazy to explain and he couldn't explain it clearly. Many people around him snickered, laughing that he was really a kindred spirit. If someone was more careful, they would find that the direction of the veiled woman's veil had changed a little. It seemed to be facing the direction of Yu Qianqiu. Obviously she had noticed this Nyoye. Fang Ming always paid attention to her movements and naturally noticed this. Just now, the beauty of the mysterious woman's graceful steps had left an indelible mark in his heart. Before, he had the heart to climb high branches, but now he had the impulse to get close to her. This couldn't be blamed on him. A graceful lady was a gentleman's desire. Any normal man would like beautiful women. However, if he was jealous of a beautiful woman, he had to consider the consequences. Fang Mingben had already suppressed his irrational action of clashing with Yu Qianqiu, but after seeing the peerless elegance of this beautiful woman, his heart began to beat wildly. Even if this woman did not have a mysterious background, it would be enough to satisfy him for the rest of his life if he could obtain her, not to mention that she might have a profound background. Originally, there were already signs of success when the conditions were right, but this Nyoye forcefully stopped it. Moreover, such a peerless beauty had actually shifted her attention from him to Nyoye. This was intolerable. Fang Ming's face was livid and shouted, "Nyoye, how dare you say such obscene words in public? Aren't you afraid of being a disgrace?" Yu Qianqiu was slightly startled. Just now he had thought that this fellow was tactful. He did not expect that this fellow would openly flip out at him. Yu Qianqiu did not know what was wrong with him. She sized him up in confusion and said, "That's strange. What does it have to do with you that I'm a disgrace to cultured people?" "I'm a disgrace to cultured people, so why are you, a liar, lecturing me?" "Since you keep saying that I'm a liar, then show me something to prove it. Don't spout nonsense. Do you think everyone in the world is a fool?" Fang Ming threw caution to the wind. He was sure that the mysterious woman was also someone who loved music. Otherwise, she wouldn't have played the flute alone in this lonely night. Fang Ming's bet was very simple. As long as the veiled woman was a person who loved music, she would not put herself in danger. Because there was still a song to be sung. Did she not want to hear it? Moreover, the one-armed old man who guarded the ghost manor probably wouldn't allow anyone to commit murder in the ghost manor. Everyone broke out in a cold sweat for Fang Ming. Offending such a person was truly not a wise move. Fu Chun, Qin Jiaxing, and the girls looked at Fang Ming as if they were looking at an idiot. In their eyes, a mere vagrant cultivator dared to provoke a soul formation stage cultivator. Wasn't he courting death? Yu Qianqiu put down the wine jar in his hand and sat up straight. He raised his hand to touch his forehead helplessly. The copper bracelet on his wrist was very eye-catching. He said disdainfully, "I, Niu Yid, have always won people over with my virtue. Tell me, how can I prove it so that you will be convinced?" Fang Ming's face tensed up. "Niu Yid, I don't know if you know music or not, but since you insist on proving that I'm a liar, don't say that I'm making things difficult for you. If you can sing a song composed by Yu Qianqiu, then it will be a strong proof." He secretly prepared another excuse in his mind. If Yu Qianqiu really knew how to play and sing, and if it was the two songs that he had just sung, then he would say that Yu Qianqiu was merely imitating him. If it was another song, then no one here would have heard it. At that time he could firmly deny that it was a song composed by Yu Qianqiu. "That's it? As long as I can sing a song composed by Yu Qianqiu, then I can prove that you're a liar?" Yu Qianqiu narrowed his eyes. In his previous life he was a master of conspiracies. Even if Niu Yi did not leave a way out, he had already prepared for the worst. He had seen many people like Niu Yi. He snorted coldly and said, "What if you don't admit that it's a song composed by Yu Qianqiu that no one has ever heard of before?" Fang Ming's thoughts were exposed, but he still gritted his teeth and said, "As long as you don't imitate someone else's song, then it'll be fine." Yu Qianqiu's song has a different tune than the one we're familiar with. You'll know it once you hear it. As soon as he finished speaking, he heard the sound of a lazy zither. Everyone looked toward the source of the sound. Unknowingly, a zither had appeared on Niu Yid's knees. He was casually playing with it with one hand. Everyone's eyes lit up. They knew that a good show was about to begin. Since Niu Yid could carry a zither with him, he must be an expert in this field. Qin Jiaxing and Fu Chun looked at each other. Yan Lan and the other girls looked at each other. They didn't expect Niu Yid to really know how to play the zither. In the cultivation world, there weren't many male cultivators who were willing to spend their time on this field. Of course, those who were passionate about it were mostly female cultivators. This was because women were born to be sentimental. The pair of eyes under the green veil stared closely at Yu Qianqiu's every move, and a faint look of expectation appeared in them. Yu Qianqiu stared at Fang Ming with a faint smile. His fingers touched the strings of the zither, and he began to play with it elegantly and skillfully. A beautiful melody slowly flowed into everyone's heart. He sang softly, "I am a fox that has cultivated for 1,000 years. 1,000 years of cultivation, 1,000 years of loneliness." Everyone was familiar with this song and the tune. However, it was clearly more emotional than Fang Ming's song. There were many subtle differences, but it was more provocative. Even if they didn't understand, they could tell that Niu Yid's singing was better than Fang Ming's. This was a very normal thing. It was a song that was passed down from the mouth of Yu Qianqiu. It would be strange if Yu Qianqiu himself was not familiar with it. There were no recording devices in this era, so it wasn't a big deal if the song was lost. However, it showed everyone what an authentic song was. Fang Ming's face changed color. After playing and singing for a short while, Yu Qianqiu changed his tune midway. He sang again, "Since the beginning only the newlyweds smile who would hear the old cry. The word love is so hard. Should I ask for the truth or should I pretend to be confused? It's hard to be content with knowing too much." The tune was so skillfully switched between the two songs, and it was so perfect and beautiful that it made people secretly fascinated. However, after a few more lines, the sound of the zither changed again. It was no longer affectionate and had become aggressive. Yu Qianqiu's 10 fingers strummed the zither strings as he stared at Fang Ming and said in an indifferent tone, "People strive to climb higher and water flows lower. If you want to climb higher and change your fate, no one will say anything. A fair lady is a gentleman's dream, and you're right. However, you're blind to think that everyone in the world is as gullible as fools. You're too naive. Fang Ming, if you have the guts to do it, you should be prepared to bear the consequences. If you admit that you're a liar now, I'll spare your life." Fang Ming glanced at the doubtful gazes around him and said unwillingly, "These are clearly the two songs that I played earlier. You made some slight changes to them and you're calling me a liar? Who's the naive one here?" "I knew you would say that." Yu Qianqiu shook his head and sneered. With the movement of his fingers, the tune suddenly became impassioned, and the audience's mood became bolder. Yu Qianqiu stared at his fingers and said without looking up, "This is a song Yu Qianqiu composed for me. Not many people have heard it. On this lonely night it's fate that we met. I'm willing to play this song for everyone free of charge. I'll sing this song to raise everyone's spirits." Hearing this, everyone's eyes lit up again, and they were filled with anticipation. Her red lips pursed under the green veil, which was a rare sight. "Fang Ming, I'll give you one last chance." Yu Qianqiu tilted his head and stared at him. Towards this guy who claimed that Yu Qianqiu was a peerless genius, Yu Qianqiu wanted to give him some face. However, it was better for him to show off his talent in front of a beauty. Although Yu Qianqiu wasn't interested in the veiled beauty, it didn't stop him from satisfying his vanity. After all, there were few men who wouldn't be willing to be worshipped by a beauty. This was also the main reason why he came out to sing for free, since he had nothing better to do. Moreover, he believed that the guy's singing skills were indeed inferior to his. Since he wanted to promote Yu Qianqiu as a peerless genius, he might as well let Niu Yu do it for him. He was sure that the audience would be satisfied and the peerless genius Yu Qianqiu would also be satisfied. However, the result of his action was that Fang Ming was doomed to be unlucky. However, Yu Qianqiu didn't like this guy who pretended to be cool, so he wouldn't help him. It was already good enough that he was willing to give Fang Ming a chance and a way out. Fang Ming sighed. It wasn't easy for him to get a chance to show off today. Why did he have to meet Niu Yu, who appeared out of nowhere? Was this really his fate? Although he had a vague feeling that something was wrong, he was blinded by greed. He forced himself to be calm and said, "True gold fears no fire, and justice is in the hearts of people." Chapter 539. He was stubborn, but his four brothers started to feel uneasy. To survive in the cultivation world until now, avoiding the strong and the weak was one of the rules of survival. This Niu Yu was obviously unfathomable. They couldn't understand why Fang Ming was so stubborn. Was it worth taking such a big risk? Justice exists in the hearts of people? Yu Qianqiu's fingers danced non-stop on the zither. He sneered and said, "If justice exists in the hearts of people, why would there be a distinction between the secular world and the cultivation world? Everyone has justice in their hearts, and there's no need for us to risk our lives fighting and killing. Every man for himself is the most suitable phrase to be used in the cultivation world." His words caused the bonfire to fall into silence. Only the sound of the zither could be heard. Everyone was reflecting on their past experiences in the cultivation world. Truly, every man for himself was the definition of every man for himself. Many people sighed softly and poured the strong liquor down their throats. Your way of thinking is too one-sided and extreme. For example, this old senior. Fang Ming righteously waved his hand and pointed at the one-armed old man in the leaning mountain pavilion. He said passionately, not to mention his profound cultivation base, he has been silently maintaining the ghost village for countless years. He has not allowed the ghost village to fall into ruins. He has also provided a place for us wandering cultivators to stay. Can you say that this old senior's actions are also every man for himself? Nice bootlicking. I hope he can save your life in the future. Yu Qianqiu glanced at him disdainfully and ignored him. His fingers danced on the zither, producing an infinitely melancholic tune. He looked around and said with a faint smile, "There's wine today, so let's get drunk today. When we meet again in the future we will be passers-by. Niu Yu will present a song to relieve the boredom of fellow wandering cultivators." As soon as he finished speaking, his fingers suddenly danced wildly on the zither, producing a messy noise that made everyone's teeth go numb. Everyone looked at him with bared teeth. Just now he was talking about warming people's hearts. Why did he turn into a disgusting person in the blink of an eye? Fang Ming frowned under the green veil. Fang Ming was secretly happy. So he was just pretending. Just when everyone's emotions were in a mess, the ear-piercing noise came to an abrupt end. Just as everyone relaxed and heaved a sigh of relief, a beautiful melody that was interwoven with ding-ding-dong-dong slowly entered everyone's hearts. It was like when one was unbearably hot in a hot summer and was suddenly wrapped in a cool and refreshing feeling. It made one heave a sigh of relief, and at the same time, it was so comfortable that one could not help but want to let out a groan. As the sound of the zither gradually opened the hearts of the people, they heard Yu Qianqiu reciting in a bleak tone, "The winds and clouds of the world originate from my generation. Once I enter Jianghu, time flies. 1,000 years of cultivation, chatting and laughing, can't compare to a drunken life. The night breeze was cool, the bonfire was bright, and the crackling sound of the firewood could not pull everyone out of their trance. With just a few lines, everyone followed the melody and stepped into the turbulent cultivation world in an instant. The past was still vivid in their minds, and the rogue cultivators could not bear to look back. Complacency and frustration appeared before their eyes one by one, and how much blood and tears were mixed in them. How much did they give up and how much did they gain? Did they give up more or did they gain more? They did not know how long this dream would last. They also did not know if these years of hard searching were worth it. Can't compare to a drunken life. Many people casually muttered, then shook their heads with a bitter smile and sighed. How could they relieve their worries? Only the mellow and strong wine. The rogue cultivators sitting around the bonfire rose and fell with the prelude of the zither, and the cool wine went straight down their throats. For a moment, the fragrance of the wine wafted everywhere, making the night full of bonfire and confused but clear, and worthy of eternal remembrance. Can't compare to a drunken life? Everyone knew that they could not be so free and easy, but tonight they could get drunk. Fu Chun and Qin Jiaxing looked at Yu Qianqiu with their mouths wide open, as if they did not recognize him. Was this still the boss from before? They had followed Yu Qianqiu for a period of time, and they knew that this boss was cruel and merciless, and he would kill at the slightest provocation. Moreover, he often used vulgar words like father and mother. It was hard to imagine that he could say such words with deep meaning. Moreover, looking at his elegance and the romantic way he played the zither, it was quite scary. Are we hallucinating? Fu Chun and Qin Jiaxing looked at each other in disbelief. Yan Lan and the other girl's eyes were full of little stars, and they were full of splendor. They all bent their knees and rested their chins on their hands, staring at him with their blurred eyes. This man could really make women fall for him. His eyes under the green veil, although they were moving, they were as calm as before. But now they were rippling as if a small stone had been thrown into a pool of stagnant water, and it made people's hearts fluctuate, and it was difficult to calm down. Fang Ming suddenly came to his senses, and he stared at Yu Qianqiu with an unpredictable expression. Yu Qianqiu, who was playing the zither, also gave him a disdainful look. That's right, Yu Qianqiu was indeed looking down on him. How dare you pretend to be elegant in front of me? Elegant is **t, it's only for people who have nothing better to do. Who has ever seen someone who can't even fill his stomach pretending to be elegant? Elegant, you son of a b***t, I can do whatever I want and I've already stopped playing. Today I'll let you see what it means to pretend to be elegant. Playing the zither, singing and reciting poems, haven't you seen it before? This is called being overflowing with talent. Yu Qianqiu had deliberately played the zither before, and it wasn't just on a whim. Because everyone had already listened to a few songs, it was as if they had eaten too much delicious food, and now they were being served another delicious dish. If everyone wanted to taste the authentic taste, they would need a cup of plain water to wash away the residue on their taste buds, so that they wouldn't taste mixed. As for Yu Qianqiu's violent and random flicking, it was like a cup of tasteless plain water, completely washing away the lingering aftertaste in everyone's minds. After doing this, he began to show off proudly. He snatched this romantic night that belonged to Fang Ming into his own hands. While everyone was still sighing, they heard Yu Qianqiu reciting sonorously with the zither. Riding on a sword to traverse heaven and earth, white bones fly like startled birds. The world is like a tide and people are like water, but how many people return to the martial world? He added a slight sigh at the end, feeling a little sad about parting. The world is like a tide and people are like water, but how many people return to the martial world? The rogue cultivators repeated it over and over again. Thinking back to when they first entered the cultivation world, everyone was still simple and everyone had a few good friends, but who could survive? Even if they were still alive, who could still maintain that innocence? Deceiving each other to save their own lives? How many people returned to the martial world? Suddenly, someone stood up, threw the wine jar in his hand into the distance, and roared under the night sky. Cultivation world, you son of a bitch. That person gradually closed his eyes, and 2 streaks of tears slid down his beard, glowing under the light of the bonfire. This person was none other than the mid-stage nascent soul cultivator, Tianyi. Perhaps he was thinking of his relatives and friends who no longer existed. The eyes of the 2 people beside him were also red, and they didn't say anything. They only knew how to pour the wine into their mouths. Next to the mountain pavilion, under the illumination of the incandescent lamp, behind the green gauze curtain, her red lips moved slightly, and an almost inaudible voice came out. Riding on a sword to traverse heaven and earth, white bones fly like startled birds. The world is like a tide and people are like water, but how many people return to the martial world? It seemed to be the first time this mysterious woman spoke. Her voice was mellow like silver beads falling on a plate, crisp and pleasant to the ear. Unfortunately, the cultivation of the people below could not hear it. Only the old man behind her heard it. The one-armed old man slowly turned his head to look at Yu Qianqiu, and his calm eyes were a little dim, as if he was peeling away the night sky and looking at the distant past. Ah! A burst of wild and carefree laughter suddenly sounded under the night sky, and the bonfire suddenly flickered. Everyone was startled and looked over, and it was Yu Qianqiu laughing with his head facing the sky. The sound of the zither also became carefree and leisurely, and his 10 fingers were as bright as a blooming lotus, freely moving on the strings. The carefree and leisurely sound of the zither seemed to be warning everyone that since the past was unbearable to look back on, why not just let it go and laugh it off? The sound of the zither suddenly surged and everyone's emotions fluctuated along with it. Suddenly they heard Yu Qianqiu sing loudly, "The ocean laughs, the surging tides on both sides, floating and sinking with the waves, remembering the present. The heavens laughs, the tides of the world, only God knows who wins and who loses. The rivers and mountains laugh, the misty rain is far away, the waves wash away the mortal world, how many do you know in the secular world? The cool breeze laughs, actually provoking loneliness, the heroic spirit is still there in the evening. La 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 ha." The song surged in the wilderness. Although it was night, the moon was bright and the stars were sparse, but everyone's state of mind was instantly brought into another world. Under the bright sky, laughing alone at the ups and downs of the ocean, laughing at the vicissitudes of life like floating clouds, fighting for fame and wealth like passing clouds. How many people in the cultivation world live in fear and anxiety? How can it be as carefree as watching the sunset with a wisp of cool breeze? Yu Qianqiu's 10 fingers, the unrestrained singing and the wild and hearty laughter dazzled Yan and the other girls, and they couldn't help but fall into a trance. Fu Chun and Qin Jiaxing were dumbfounded, and they really suspected that their boss was possessed by something unclean. Inside the pavilion, the one-armed old man's cold eyes gradually melted. Beside the pavilion, the blue muslin on the bridle fluttered without any wind. The pair of eyes inside stared at Yu Qianqiu, who was indulging himself. Her soft red lips moved slightly and she murmured to herself, "The rivers and mountains laugh, the misty rain is far away." Is this a song composed by Yu Qianqiu? The common people laugh, no longer lonely, the heroic spirit is still there. As Yu Qianqiu sang, he couldn't help himself, and he gradually got into the mood. He seemed to be crazily singing to his heart's content. His wild and unrestrained manner really stirred people's hearts. Not to mention the others, they all swayed their upper bodies along with the song, and their flying swords clanked again. Together with the music, they sang along with Yu Qianqiu, "The ocean laughs, the surging tides on both sides, floating and sinking with the waves, remembering the present." This song was both heroic and catchy, suitable for these men to vent their emotions. After being led to sing a few times, they all sang very well. Under the night sky, beside the piles of bonfires, the fragrance of wine mixed with the wild singing drifted in the wilderness. The veiled woman beside the pavilion raised her flute and gently placed it next to her lips. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.